With us today is Dennis Fields. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I can't complain. I could, but I don't think anybody cares anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So everybody gets a proper introduction. So, like I said, we have Dennis Fields with us today. He's a city planner. He's a president of the Upper Plemento Zymagers Society, which ironically spells ups, which I thought was pretty funny. He's close to 10 years of home brewing.
Yeah, about
So
15-ish or
Oh,
so.
about
Yeah, yeah.
15 now? Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's still a long time. That's amazing. You've been in quite a few competitions. It looks like you won second place for Best of Show with your Raspberry Sour, which we're definitely going to talk about that here in a little while. And you
hmm
won several regional medals, which is awesome as well, too. You helped judge some regional competitions, although you're not a certified judge. We'll talk
Right.
about that, too. I found you this way. You're a do-it-self builder. I'm definitely just trying to find like a cheaper way to get into this hobby. So I definitely watched a lot of your stuff. Gosh, 3 or 4 years ago, I'd say. I love your brewing philosophy. You don't need fancy, shiny equipment to brew great beer. Keep it simple and cheap. Love that. You love experimenting with recipes. Married, father of 2 sons, Minnesotan Vikings fan, which I
That's
used to be
right.
way back in the day when you had like Chris Carter and Randy Moss, all those guys. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
awesome then.
A lifetime
That's
of
fishing.
disappointment. But yeah, yeah.
See, I'm a Lions fan, so I'm originally from
Okay.
Michigan. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there you go.
I get
You know
that.
the pain. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the pain. And loves the outdoors. Is there anything else I miss?
That's it. Yeah, no, I anything to keep me busy. I rarely sit around. And so when I'm not brewing, I'm
Yeah,
doing things with friends or out in the outdoors fishing and doing whatever. So I can give you a little backstory about my getting into brewing and things and
for
how I
sure.
kind of started the channel. So when my wife and I were getting married, we decided we were going to buy a cool gift for all of our groomsmen, and we bought a Mr. Beer kit for everybody. And I think that's how probably a lot of people got started, especially back in the day, or even now. They even still sell the Mr. Beer kits. I think we bought them at like something crazy, like Bed Bath and Beyond. We didn't even go to like a brew store or something, right? We bought them from just like I think it was like I said, Bed Bath and Beyond. And so I bought one for myself. And I brewed I think it was like a Pilsner or something. I did not do temperature control. I didn't do anything. They didn't really even tell you. I think they just said a packet that said like yeast in the inside. It didn't even tell you what really much to do about it. So I brewed this beer and I invited a friend of mine over and I was like, hey, I brewed this beer myself. You should try this beer. I made it in my kitchen, or whatever. And he tasted, he's like, well, yeah, it's beer. And I said, well, what do you think? And he's like, well, you should come over and hang out with a couple of guys I know. They do some all grain brewing. And so I was like, okay, well, that's a nice way of saying that doesn't taste very good. But,
All right.
well, to me, it didn't taste bad. And then again, I didn't know what was good from bad back then. But,
hmm
I did like craft brew. I enjoyed going to some of the breweries as they were first opening it up, even in 2010s, 11s, 12s, that kind of thing. And they're first kind of getting off the ground, right? And so went over and brewed a couple of beers, just watching his friends. And then
hmm
for that Christmas, my wife ended up getting me like an extract kit with I can do all full
Hmm.
boils, a 10-gallon pot, the whole deal.
Wow. Yeah.
Uh, so I started out doing propane brews in my garage, doing extract kits, and I did extract kits for a long time. And
hmm
so I had beers that turned out really, really good. I had
hmm
beers that turned out absolutely terrible. I have good experiences, bad experiences, and but I still didn't really have a lot of information on what I was doing right versus what I was doing wrong. And I did
Right.
that for a long time, for a few years even, right? But I look back now and I look back and I kind of understand why some of the things didn't go right. I was making really good beer in the wintertime, but I wasn't making as
hmm
good a beer in the summertime. And nowhere in the packets of kits that you would get online
hmm
would it say, make sure you have a yeast temperature, or a fermentation temperature for your whatever
Right.
yeast you're choosing. They just had a choice for yeast and you just kind of pick one, and you see online everybody's using, USO5 or whatever. It's a
hmm
standard clean ale yeast, or, White Lab 001 or something. And so that's what you get. And so you just pitch it in and you didn't really think much of it. You just have your bucket in the bedroom somewhere, or that kind of thing. And little did I know, during the summer months, it was too warm and I was getting all these off flavors and stuff. So I'd brew the same recipe in the wintertime and it'd be awesome, So I was really like, man, I just brewed this. Why is this so wildly different? And I just didn't know what I didn't know at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, kind of fast forward several years later, I got into all grain. I started watching a lot more YouTube videos on how to do
Mhm.
this kind of thing. And when I moved to, me and my wife moved down from Minnesota to the just south of Charlotte area in South Carolina. And I went to a brewery, after work one time, and I was talking to the guy who's serving beers, and he says, are you part of the local homebrew club? I'm like, what's a homebrew club? Like, so I'm like, no, I'm not. But he gave me a little card, and I showed up to the place where we met, and I expected it to be about like six guys sitting around a table, and I was just going to ignore them and get a beer and then walk out of there. But they actually shut down the whole place. They had like 30, 40 people there. And I was
Holy
like, wow,
crap.
this is really cool. We actually have a pretty
Yeah.
decent sized clubs in the Charlotte area. And they had the whole place shut down. The place, dedicated the night to the homebrew club they assigned. The board members really were welcoming when I came in. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Fast
Yeah.
forward now, years later, I'm the president of the Upper Palmetto Zymergy, and we're still going strong. So, I did multiple different roles throughout the years, but I learned a lot
Oh, I bet you
uh,
did.
by just being on the club, learning stuff. We have guests all the
Mhm.
time and things. So it's really cool to be part of a group of people you can kind of learn from,
Mhm.
which is kind of cool.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, when I was first on the board, I was doing education type of stuff for the club, like trying to get presenters to come in from other breweries, etc. And and so they would do topics on like how to brew a hazy IPA, for instance, or
Right.
how to brew like we did stuff even on like pickling or cheese making or whatever.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so yeah, it was pretty cool. So we did that. We also ran into COVID, right? And so we
Mhm.
couldn't meet as a group anymore. And so we were trying to find fun and collaborative ways to like meet on Teams and stuff, or Zoom. I guess Teams didn't even exist back then, but like Zoom. And I said, it'd be really cool if I could make some videos to kind of show people how to brew beer, like basic stuff. So hence Cityscape Brewing was born. And I said, I'm not really going to do this for the club. I'm going to do this kind of as myself, but I'll show it
Mhm.
to the club members to kind of as education things or what you need to get started and, brewing
Right.
101 type videos. So that's kind of how I got started on the video, was probably due to COVID. I was watching a lot more brewing stuff on there, and wanted to kind of
Yeah.
give an opportunity to share it from my homebrew club. And here I am, almost, I think it's going on, what, 5 years later? Here I am, four
Wow,
years
yeah.
later. Yeah,
Heck
it's
yeah,
somewhere
that's
in there.
awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess I do want to go back just a little bit, but you covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So with the extract kits, do you remember what was the first one that you actually got to brew?
Yeah. So I was fortunate because when I lived in Minnesota, they actually had stores for Northern Brewer and
Mm-hmm.
Midwest Supply, which everybody is familiar with. Northern Brewer, they are national. They ship nationally and stuff, but I don't think they even have like retail stores you can go in. Or if they do, there's only like one or two of them anymore. But I could go in there and like look around and buy grain and stuff like that, and so it was really cool. They didn't just have to ship. So I would go in there, and I actually, I think the first one I bought was like a Bell's Two Hearted clone. I think they called it.
Okay.
Um, I can't even remember. I'd have to look back. It's funny. I save a book of like every kit that I've ever done or
Oh,
anything in this
nothing wrong with that.
binder, basically
Heck
of
yeah,
recipes. Some of the old extract kits ones aren't in here, but I did a lot of kits that they just put together. But I did some pale ale ones. I did that's what it was called. It was called Dead Ringer IPA. That's what they called it.
Yep. Yep. I've
You
had
remember?
that one. Yep.
Yeah, you had that one. Okay,
Yeah.
so that one it's supposed to be like Bell's Two Hearted Ale. Since I have perfected that recipe, by the way, and it's on my channel. But back then that was as close as I was going to get with an extract kit, right?
Right.
And it was great. It was a good experience. I made some pretty good beers. I
Mhm.
made different styles. I didn't know the difference between really ales and lager, at least temperature wise back then.
Right.
I just kind of brewed stuff, but I liked the pale ale IPA ish kits more than anything, so
Mhm.
that's what I brewed.
But that's really, really cool. So, like, I kind of did the same. I got a Northern Brew kit about 5 years ago. I did their Amber Block Party, which I thought was really good. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good beer overall.
Nice.
And then I started watching videos. I got the John Palmer, how to brew beer and all that kind of stuff. And I kept seeing like brewing a bag, brewing a bag. And I was like, oh, cool. Because all the other videos I was watching, like, all you need is 3 tiers, or this convert this cooler and do this. I was like, I don't want to do all that crap. And I was like, I know how to make tea. And so all I do is steep grain. I'll just do this. So I went brew in the bag. So I did one extract kit, jumped right into brew in a bag. And I loved it ever since. Now I still do a couple kits. There's one kit that I like to buy because it kind of has everything I need, and then I just tweak it to make it taste better because I
Yeah.
understand brewing a little bit better now than I did back in the day. I still want to tweak it some more. It's a blueberry. What is it? It's a honey blueberry ale, which is good by itself. All that is blueberry on the nose, but there's no blueberry on your palate. So what I want to do is I want to ferment on blueberries and probably add a little bit of blackberry puree as well to get more of a berry punch. So I think that
Yeah.
may turn out pretty well. So for me, I didn't have a hard time switching. So I only did one extract kit. For you switching after many years doing extract kits, going to all grain, like how was that transition for you?
I think it's daunting for anyone, right? I think as you think about it, you think there's so many more variables and it seems a little overwhelming for most people. And I think that's probably why a lot of people hesitate a little bit to get into the extract or going from extract to all grain. What I'll say is that it's really not, but there are things there are things you need to decide on and variables that you can change in that step that will make your beer a lot better and give you some room to grow and change recipes more than extract brewing. And when I first started, the kits had some variety of extract, whether it was liquid or dry malt extract, but there's even more. I mean, there's a ton, so you can kind of stay in that realm, a little comfort zone, a little longer.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's also the liquid and the you had to warm those things up if you ever bought the liquid ones and then they pour and you have to I used a propane burner. I'd have to shut the burner off to mix it in because it would scorch on the bottom if you didn't, and you poured it too fast. The DME is just powdery mess, sugary, sticky stuff gets everywhere, right? So there's also problems with extract too. So it's not a perfect world. But one thing that I think, um, what shied me away from doing it right away wasn't necessarily the equipment because I knew that there was a lot of DIY stuff, which is what I ended up doing. I made a DIY mash tun with just a bazooka screen and some valve on the outside. And I used a 10-gallon Rubbermaid container. But and I brewed up that for a long time up until the last year or so. But
Okay.
the daunting thing was, the mashing temperature. And you hear all these things about like, well, you have to mash at a specific temperature. And if you miss it, it could be way off and all that kind of stuff. And so to me, it was like, well, I had to watch, one video on the mashing part of it, one video but nobody really explained like what was happening during that time. Like, why is that important to me? Like all that kind of stuff. And so as I learned and I got better at it, I had to kind of hodgepodge a bunch of different videos together to kind of make here's how you brew, right? There's a lot of brewing 101 videos on YouTube now, right? And some of them are a lot better than others. But when I first started all grain years ago, there wasn't quite as many. There was a few, there wasn't quite as many. And so I think they do a better job of kind of covering some of the bases. But
Hmm.
my second video I ever made on the channel was I don't care how long it's going to be. It is going to tell you everything you never know and hopefully why you need to know about all grain brewing in one video. It's 47 minutes long and my wife uses it to fall asleep at night. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that video to me, I'm still proud to say that is my most popular video on my channel because it just means that people are getting some value out of it, right?
Okay.
The whole point of the channel is to bring people into the craft, teach people how to
Okay.
become better brewers, right? And answer questions because, like, man, I've made some mistakes over the years, right? I will share those with you so you don't have to do the same thing, right?
Right.
And so, that's part of it. So, the tips and tricks videos are on there, the DIY stuff, and we can
Hmm.
get into some of the stuff that I've made.
Oh yeah.
So I've got a bunch of different things, but as I got started, and I still say this to people, like I use a claw hammer system now, and not everybody needs to go spend $1,000 or more on a system right away. You can do one for $50. Heck, you can find them on Craigslist for less than that, and
Hmm.
you can find out even if you want to do this long term, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're going to brew a couple times a year, probably not. Probably don't need some fancy all-in-one system, right? But if you just have a pot and you can do it on the stove or even on a burner outside or something, in your garage, you're in business if you got a cooler and like a cheap bazooka screen for like $15.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be that daunting to get into it.
Hmm.
And if you understand why you're pouring the grains and why the temperature matters about, dryness and malt flavors and stuff like that. And hopefully that video kind of goes over that. Now I've since learned even more since been doing the channel and stuff, but that's kind of what it's all about. So to me, it was daunting at first.
Mhm.
Now I see it as I kind of joke around that it's my adult chemistry set because it's
For
because
sure,
that's
right?
kind of what it is, right?
Mhm.
The next step is water additions. And at first I say
Oh
people
gosh,
don't worry about water
love it.
right away. Just use spring water if your water tastes
Mhm.
terrible, and then figure the water out later. Like
Yep.
master the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Temperature control being number one, right? And so other than that, it's not that different than extract brewing. Once you got it all in the pot
Mhm.
later, it's the same thing. You're adding
Yep.
hops and you're adding yeast. So
Yeah. So mine was a little bit different. So I went, I think I did water salts first before I did temp control.
yeah, you are
I
backwards.
yeah. My problem is when I pick up a hobby, I really dive all in. So this one I'm
Mhm.
dragging my feet. So after watching a bunch of different videos and stuff like that, I did a lot of ales, and my basement stays roughly under 70 degrees anyway, so I wasn't really too worried about it.
Sure.
So when I got into lagers, I bought a very expensive Swiss Army knife spunding valve. Like does all this crazy stuff. I can daisy chain, come up with kegs. So I
Yeah.
use pseudo lagers, right? So as I was slowly trying to figure out how am I going to do my lagering system, I still don't have the perfect way, but I use my keezer on the other side. I'm pointing where like you can see it, but you
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah.
So I have this 5 gallon trash can, really skinny one. I fill up with water. Have a pond pump that sucks the water, goes through a coil that goes through my fermenting bucket. Now I have another fermenter my wife bought me for Christmas. So I use that to have my temp control. Is it the best in the world? No, but I can get down to lagering temps, and
Yeah.
it works totally fine. That's just a really
Exactly.
janky system, but it's fine because I'm not too worried about it because I don't make a whole lot of loggers anyway, so it's not that big of
Right.
a deal. But I
But
wanted,
there's
God,
cheap ways of doing it, right?
oh gosh,
That's
there
a
is,
good way of
yeah.
doing it.
Because when I was reading about water salts, and again, like you don't have to worry about that right now, anyways. The more you read about those, you think, oh, you can make this hop be more pronounced, or you can make this
Hmm.
malt pop. So I was like, oh, I want to see if I can do that. So I guess I'm kind of like you in a way. I don't brew the same beer very often. I like to try
Hmm.
different styles, but there are some I do like to come back and revisit. Like my cream ale, I make a cream ale all the time. I enjoy it. I think it's easy style to make. Blueberry honey ale, like I brought up earlier, I make that one quite a bit. I like to tweak that one as well. But yeah, I think this hobby is not hard. The thing I usually tell people is like I have a cleaning, or I wash a lot of dishes that produces beer because you wash so much
That's right.
stuff over and over and over again.
It's
Like,
more cleaning and sanitizing than anything else. So if you don't
oh
like
my
doing that,
gosh.
then you're gonna have a hard time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if my buddy, he makes beer, but he has a hard time washing up that. So like so
Hmm.
he'll do like 2 beers at once. So you don't have to wash a bunch of stuff. So yeah,
Yeah,
you do what you got to do.
that's right. That's right. I mean, it makes it easier if you can do it right away because I've waited overnight
Yeah.
before. Not a good idea. It's harder to clean and all that kind of
Oh.
stuff. But that is the benefit of having an all-in-one system. You can kind of run some stuff through the pumps and things like that, and
Okay.
that's another thing. Like I use a pump now. I never did for years, and my motto was all gravity is free, guys. Like you don't need a
Hmm.
pump, right? So, but I understand people. Some people are older. Some people might not be able to lift a big pot, or somebody's used in other things. There's
Right.
reasons for it, and now that I have one, I do love it. But at the same
Yeah.
time, it's if you can get away with not using it, yes, absolutely, right? So, um, yeah, so as I started kind of going, I can kind of talk a little bit about some of the stuff that I made DIY if you want to go into that
Oh
realm.
yeah, we can. Yeah, sure.
Sure. So
Yeah, let's go for there. The
yeah,
hop
so the
spider is one thing I thought was the coolest thing I ever saw.
yeah, actually, I was going to show that first because that's like the first thing I should suggest people make, right? So,
Yeah.
the one thing you do is you worry about like adding all those hops later, and for a
Mhm.
long time I used just like a regular screen, and it would fill up, and I'd kind of stop the dump it in the fermenter, and I'd kind of dump out as much of the hop resin as I could, and I'd probably do that. Well, I was like, this is getting ridiculous, so I'm not doing that anymore. So I made one of these guys, which is the hop spider. So it's literally just a PVC flange, from a homebrew supply store, or a homebrew supply, a hardware supply store, Lowe's, Home Depot, whatever. And then these large like bolts and some the or bolts and nuts that go on the inside, right, to
Mhm.
tighten them down. And then I have this pipe clamp that's on the top. And the reason I have that pipe clamp is because I use a paint strainer bag. So these you can also buy at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot or something. This one is a 5 gallon version. They make a 1 gallon that I use for dry hopping a lot of times too. But you take this guy and you literally just put it up the middle of this, and you take off the pipe clamp, and you wrap the bag around the outside here,
Mhm.
and then you put that pipe clamp back on it. You can tighten it down. Usually the clamp itself is like, as long as it's a little snug, is enough to like hold it. Even if you got like pounds of hops, it's not going to like pull this thing off. And
Right.
you kind of do that. And then you have a little hole, and all of your hops go in, and they can like soak in your beer as you're brewing. And you just want to make sure that this is long enough, of course, in your pots, not too tall to be able to fit that in there. Right. And so,
Mhm.
but that was the cheapest way to do it for me. They have these, commercially available, but they're really expensive. That's like, a few dollars at the hardware store, and you're all good to go. Right. And so I used that thing for years. I still use it from time to time, even on the claw hammer system, because some of the, you see these micron screen mesh ones that you have, and those clog up so much. Like, you can't
Mhm.
put but a couple ounces of hops in them, and then they're really difficult to drain the actual hops out of. You don't know if you're getting all the oils out of them. This thing, you can literally like lift up the bag from the bottom, and you can have, I mean, I put like almost 12 ounces of hops in that thing. I mean, it'll
Holy
hold
crap.
a ton, right? And so, like, huge. And then I also use these, and you can reuse them because they're silicone, right? So the
Okay,
bags
yeah.
themselves, so you can rinse them out. You can reuse them from brew to brew to brew, or you can use them in your like post fermentation for like a bunch of fruit and stuff. So you're talking about like using like blueberries or something else. I catch all like the seeds and stuff from like my fruits that I use for like sours in that bag. So I can just like leave that in there as I'm transferring, and I won't get any of the seeds or the skin or anything like that
Okay, yeah, yeah,
transferred into my keg. Right.
right. That's
So
awesome.
just get all the juice and none of the bad stuff that you don't want in the final product.
Yeah.
So that's one of them. That was probably the thing I think a lot of people make like the most. I have like I said, a video on each one of these things. The next thing that I made, which is kind of bigger, but I'll pull it up here, is a way to clean stuff. We talked about cleaning stuff. I made this keg and carboy cleaner out of a sump
Mm.
pump. So the sump
Oh,
pump is a 1/3 horsepower sump pump that somebody sold me on Craigslist, believe it or not. And then I just bought some fittings and like made a spot for the keg and stuff to sit on the top, or a
yeah.
carboy if you have it. And then I even made fittings that go right onto my connections for my kegs. So they go through all the dip tubes and stuff. So I can actually plug this thing in. I got all these little holes drilled in here, and they actually spray in different directions, including the very cap. I've got a bunch of holes on the top here. And this thing can clean all of my kegs and or carboys and stuff as I'm brewing or doing something else. So I might
Mhm.
have a couple kegs sitting off the side that are dirty, and I'll kind of wait to kind of clean them all at the same time. So I'll have a bucket that has cleaner in it, a bucket that has just fresh water, and a bucket that has sanitizer. And I'll kind of run all of them through the cleaner, then all of them through the rinse, and then all of them through the uh, sanitizer at the end. So they're ready to go for the next beer. So it's a lot easier than scrubbing
Right.
everything out
Oh
and
my
taking everything
gosh.
apart. So
So I made something very similar to that. Mine's not as powerful as that one. Mine's again just a little
yeah,
pond pump with just a little tiny thing, right? And it's a lifesaver for sure. Like, I mean, like you said, you can put it off to the side, you can start it up, you can let it run as long as you want. Like, it doesn't really matter, right? Just as long as you get that PBW and they're mixing around. I had the same little connection. I don't have a T on mine, but mine just goes straight for the dip tube.
nice.
Yeah,
That
it's so convenient.
And people kind of forget about the dip tube, right? You get all the,
Yeah.
especially if you run a keg out, some of the stuff you're pulling off the bottom goes all the way through that out dip tube. And so that long tube in there, unless you're taking it out and rinsing it out and stuff, which is a pain taking it apart with
Yep.
ratchets and all that stuff, is
Hmm.
that this thing will clean it kind of in place. Like, you're hooking ball lock connections on there. It's cleaning all the little nooks and crannies in those dip tubes too. So I never have to really take them apart. I hardly take a keg apart anymore to clean it. So that's really nice. So it's really good. And then I was also finding like ways to like dry hop different things. And I
Hmm.
was thinking, so there's a couple different ways I do it now. Sometimes I'll use like a smaller paint strainer bag, and you'll see this on a lot of my videos, and I'll use sous vide magnets. They're magnets that have like an silicone outside that are food safe. And so you'll put like a couple of those in the bag, tie, or your couple ounces of hops or whatever you're going to use to dry hop, and you put a couple of those magnets in there, and then you roll it up, and then you can stick it on the top of your fermenter, and you can actually go through the whole fermentation thing with that thing just sitting in there. And the reason that's good is because it'll purge all those hops of oxygen. It won't ever touch the beer until you pull magnets off, and then the magnets that are in the bag help pull it underneath into the beer. So
Mhm.
I do that a lot. But one of the things that I was trying to do is just for fun. I don't use it very often, but just for fun, is to make like a little like DIY hop dropper. And I
Okay.
use the Fur Monster carboys, and they have this like bigger lid on them, right? And so
Mhm.
this is my version of like a DIY hop charge, right? So I bought these little funnels that are meant for like adding protein powder to like a water bottle.
Okay.
And they kind of fit perfectly to thread into one of these larger valves that you can just buy at like a Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. And so they're like a one-way valve, ball valve. You can see right through that thing there.
Yeah.
And so you can add, I think I fit up to like 4 ounces of hops, depending on how big the pellets are or something like that. But you don't want to like cram them in there, but you can do that. And then what I do is I have my airlock on here. And so I start out with this thing just completely closed, right? So I have the valve all the way closed, and I get the fermenter as it's starting to ferment. It ferments, and it's got the regular airlock activity on here. And um as the beer is making its way, I kind of crack this just a little bit, not to drop hops in there, but just enough to like break the seal of the airlock here. And then I kind of crack the lid up here, and now it's pushing
Move
CO2
CO2 up.
through the
Okay.
hops, so I'm not adding oxygen as I'm dry hopping. So I'll do that for like a day, and then I'll shut this again, and I'll screw this on tight again. Now
Mhm.
this is full of just CO2, and it's still
Right.
just purging out of here. And when I'm ready to dry hop, then you can just actually like open this whole thing up and drop in the
Sure.
hops. Now you sometimes it needs a little encouragement. You need to shake it a little bit because this hole isn't like super big, but it works in a pinch. And so really kind of a cool idea to kind of purge your hops of oxygen, and so
Yeah.
you're not adding oxidation after the fact. So you're not having to open up a bucket lid or something like that. You can kind of do this even on like a regular bucket lid too. You can kind of do the same thing. So I have got like a whole video on how to make stuff like that on my channel too. Pretty cool. I like to
That
just
is
play
really,
around.
really cool. No, that is
Uh,
really neat and genius.
so I was like, you see these ones that can connect to like these really fancy shiny ones. Well, we don't
Mhm.
need a fancy shiny one. We can make a plastic one like our buckets, right? So the other ones, the hop charge ones that are like glass, and they have
Mhm.
uh cam locks on them and stuff like that. Like they are um or tri clamps, I should say. They're like $300 for one of them
Yeah.
things, or more, a couple, at least a 150 for smaller ones. And yeah, they allow you to purge the thing, but it does almost the same thing as like this DIY version. Now you could even buy a bigger like one-way valve and stuff like that to make that hole bigger so it doesn't get, as easy
Right.
kind of clogged up with hops. But it's just a simple idea that I was like, I could probably make a DIY version of this. It can't be that
Mhm.
dang hard. The hardest thing was trying to get it so it still fit in my fermentation chamber behind me.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, the
So I
height
couldn't have it
restriction,
too
yeah.
tall. Yeah, I
Yeah.
couldn't have it too tall. So that's kind of reason I went with this little funnel system versus something a little bit
Mhm.
different. I was trying to use like a soda bottle at first and some other things, but I was like, okay, how do I get this to be shorter? So I started playing around. I just started looking at like funnels and things, and I came across this thing. I'm like, this is perfect. I think I can get that to work.
That's
And so
cool.
it holds pressure. It's great. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So that worked out. That works out pretty good. I don't use it very often, admittedly, but it is one of the cooler things that I've done, just DIY.
Oh, yeah, and that's what I was like, so how much do you think you put into that one, though?
Just thinking about it more than I
No,
should
no.
have.
Well, I mean,
Oh,
what the dollar-wise, yeah.
oh, dollar wise, yeah, probably. I already had the lid, so not counting the lid and the airlock, probably $15, maybe.
Oh, yeah,
I
you
so
can't beat
for
that.
everything I do on my channel too, I put everything in the video descriptions, right? So all the parts, so people don't have to guess like, hey, what did you use there, right? I have links to stuff that you can buy locally or whatever. I also put like all of the recipes for all of the beers I brew, except for a few of them. I do have some that are kind of members only for, those ones who want a premium subscriber type things, because it just gives them a little incentive for some of my better like hazy IPAs and stuff like that. But for the most part, most of my videos are open to the public because I'm not going to brew the same one, and I want you to brew good beer too, right? And if it's bad beer, I'll tell you it's bad beer because I'll be like, not my best one I've ever done before. I think there's a lot of channels where they're like, oh yeah, this beer's great, and then but you don't really know because they say that about all of them. right?
Right.
Like, so I try to back it up a little bit, say, hey, look, I won a couple medals, that should say something, right? Or I'll tell you, like this one could have been better if I did XYZ, right?
Yeah.
I've been brewing enough where I don't make a ton of bad beers, but I still do every once in a while. And anyone who tells you they don't is kind of lying to you. But I also like showing the mistakes, right? Like
Mhm.
that's another thing. Like some people see this and they're like, oh, they brew a beer and it's always turning out great. And da, da, da. It's like, no, no, there's always mess ups. There's always things that go wrong. We were kind of talking about that a little bit before
Yes.
we went on today. And um, is it echoing or are we getting a
Mm,
buffer right now? Oh,
I
okay,
think you're
good.
fine.
I thought I glitched a little bit. Sorry about that.
No
So
worries.
um when we were talking about that a little bit before when we got on the show is that, the one of the first beers that I ever made, I thought I totally messed it up. It was an
Right.
extract beer and I was going to put on the same type of airlock and they said the same O-ring here that goes in the top of your bucket, right? And I went to go put the airlock on and nobody told me you need to get it wet first or else it's gonna, it's not gonna slide in as easy. Well, I tried to force it in and that O-ring dropped inside of my wort. And I just pitched the yeast and I was like, oh my God, like I don't have another one of these because I just have the one, bucket that I was using at the time. And I'm
Right.
like, so I'm trying to like take a spoon and I'm trying to like fish it out of there and I just can't get it. So finally I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna dunk my hand, my whole arm in some sanitizer and I'm going and it took me a little while and I'm sitting there stirring around with my whole arm in this bucket of wort and I'm thinking, I found it, I got it on there, and now I'm going, man, I just ruined my beer. I just totally ruined it. All that work. I did all that boil, all this took me several hours to clean it and everything. I'm like, I was really mad at myself. And it was one of the best extract brews that I ever made. I mean, so you think you're ruining something, something always goes wrong during
Yeah.
brew day. And since then, even today, I've just brewed this beer that I'm drinking today, which is a spruce tipped
Mhm.
pale ale or IPA. It's kind of in the middle of that realm anyway, IPA pale ale. And I did that on a live on my channel. So I do some live brew days. Some days I do some lives every other Saturday or Sunday night or so about 8 p.m. Not every other. I try to hit every other, but most of them.
Right.
And then but this last time I was live and I was dumping what I thought I was recirculating into the kettle to cool
Mm.
my beer down. And it was
Mhm.
actually dumping into a bucket right below my brew kettle. And I realized that after I got about probably 2.5 gallons into this bucket that I'm refilling into like a dirty bucket on my floor. And I'm like, oh no. So I quickly shut off the pump and dumped it in the kettle. And I'm like, oh great. Like there, I just did this in front of you all. So you all see, like, I was doing it live. Like, well, here we go. Like this is brewing. This is real life, guys. Like we all mess up. And it's one of the better beers I've made in a while. Like it's a great beer. I suggest everybody brews with spruce tips, by the way. You should check out the video and then get that recipe. It's great. I
For
am going to do a
sure.
little follow up video on this and kind of a little bit more description of it, but it's a wildly different flavor that I haven't really brewed a beer similar to it in a while, so it's pretty good. Been
Have
pretty
you
good.
ever had a spruce tip beer before? Or is this your first one overall?
I have not brewed with spruce tips
Okay.
before. I have had spruce tip beers before,
Okay.
and I always think that they're a little bit. What I didn't want to do was kind of overshadow it with other flavors. I wanted to make it, as you can tell, this one is like really light colored, and
Mhm.
it's like it's not overly complex. I didn't want to like mask the spruce flavor with like malt,
Gotcha.
even like caramel malts, right? I want it to be very, very uh, spruce and hop forward. So I
Mm.
I used a lot of like two-row malt. I used some Vienna and some Munich for like just a little bit of complexity,
Mhm.
but very. And then I used some Carapils just for some head retention and stuff on the beer. Hopefully give it some lacing on the glass and things. But that's basically it, right? And it was mostly two-row, and I did that on purpose. And then I used Cascade and Mosaic hops. And I think that really paired well. I think Magnum for bittering, but Cascade and Mosaic hops. And then I added 5 ounces of the spruce tips at the end of the boil, 10 minutes left. And I was reading before I did this beer on Brewlosophy. They did a comparison beer where he brewed with spruce tips during the boil and then some with post fermentation,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
maybe he did it at High Krausen. I can't remember. I think it was high cross, and that's why I did it. But so I decided I'm going to do the best of both worlds. You like both of them for different reasons, for different flavors. So I added 5 ounces at the end of the boil, and then I added 3.5 more ounces, like I would dry hop a hazy IPA. Weird.
Hmm.
I don't know why I did it this way, but I just like, you know what, high krausen, 24, 36 hours in, I just dumped the 3.5. I had it in a paint strainer bag again, but I put that in the thing like I would normally dry hop, and I dry hopped spruce tips instead.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it has a nice complex. I mean, you can get the hops, but it's got this really nice, sweet, complex spruce flavor, and it's just
Right.
fantastic. It's way different than I thought it was, and very different than the other beers I've had with spruce tips. So these were like frozen fresh from Montana.
Okay. Yep.
The
Yep.
spruce tips come out in the spring, like right around the corner here, right? So these were frozen probably since April, May, June of last year, but they kept them frozen, so they were fresh still. I guess as fresh as you're going to get for November when I ordered them anyway. And so you could do this in the summertime, and they probably they're not even frozen very long, if ever. So that's a great beer to have in the summertime. Even you think of like these spruce tip type piney things, you think like
Mm-hmm.
Christmas, you think around the man. This would be a
Right.
crushable beer in the summertime even.
What's the ABV on that one?
It's about 6%, 6.6.
Six
Yeah.
point
So
six. Oh, okay. A
yeah.
little higher than what I
So
thought.
six and a
Yeah.
half. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not too
that's what I'm
bad.
saying. It's IPA ish.
Yeah.
It's lower a little bit on the bitterness than like your typical West Coast
Mm-hmm.
IPA,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a kind of range of IPA for ABV and stuff.
Yeah, I think we could probably jump into some of the recipe experimentations that you do. Like I said, I've watched you off and on for at least 5 years. I want to say now that I'm thinking about it. I think ever since I started homebrewing, I've been watching homebrewers
Yeah.
do their thing. One thing I've noticed here lately is you've been adding in
Ascorbic
uh
acid.
thank you. And
You're welcome.
I tried that here recently with my cloche. I've made cloche 3 times. First 2 times suck. This time it's actually pretty good. But after I talked to a bunch of other homebrewers, they've told me, even pro brewers have told me, like, cloche is not the easiest beer to make anyways. Like,
Yeah.
oh, fair enough. But I brought that up to them, and they all kind of looked at me a little befuddled. Do you mind talk about, like, what does ascorbic acid actually do?
Yeah. So and I don't play, I don't claim to be a chemist. I've only read what I've read and heard what I've heard online, and from other brewing podcasts and even YouTube channels. But there is some real world anecdotal evidence that I found just doing it myself. The thought process is that it has some chemical reaction in the mash. So you're adding it in the mash right after you get done mashing in. I add about 4 grams of ascorbic acid, and that's especially to lighter colored beers or beers that are kind of higher susceptibility to oxidation. So hazy IPAs are a big one, right? Ones with a lot of hops, but yet are lighter colored, that kind of thing. And so I generally do it to all of my beers now, maybe not to like a porter, but it wouldn't hurt even for a porter. Basically what it's doing is it's preventing the beer from getting oxidation as much, right? It's making it less susceptible to oxidation. And apparently, at 150 degrees or more when you're mashing in, there is some element that will eventually kill off some enzymes and stuff that are in there anyway, because that's like almost a pasteurization temperature. But apparently, there's been some brewlosophy experiments that have done this online. So some of their online commentators have written about this. There's also
Right.
been, I can't even remember what YouTube channel. I think it was like Party Time Brewing back in the day, or somebody else had a whole thing on it, and they were really deep diving into the chemistry part of it. So I was like, I'm going to give that a shot, and so I started doing it. And one thing I noticed was my beers were better all the way from start to finish
Mm-hmm.
through the process. So I always started with good beer, fresh beer, right? Good beer. Your first half of the keg tastes the same. But as it gets down to the last couple pints, maybe, or something like that, maybe it's more susceptible to,
Right.
getting a little bit more off flavors. It doesn't taste quite the same as it did when you first
Mm-hmm.
tapped it. And what I'm finding is that this beer, for instance, will taste the exact same my first pint as it will the last. And I think it could be because I'm just better at doing it over time. I have no idea.
Right.
It could be it's all a mental game, but there is some chemistry, I believe, behind this from what I've read and listened to,
Mm-hmm.
that says that helps prevent it. So we all aren't perfect on transferring beer. Sometimes we're not all perfect
Right.
on, transferring it into a keg or bottling. A lot of people still bottle, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna end up getting some exposure to oxygen. And so even breweries will use ascorbic acid, but a lot of times they'll use it during the canning process. And so
Mm.
when you even buy like apple juice from the store, you'll see on the back of the label, it'll say apple juice, and then it'll say ascorbic acid, and it says vitamin C, because that's basically ascorbic acid is vitamin
Right.
C. And so that is to make sure that the apple juice doesn't turn brown. That's in the package, right? So you're kind of doing that, but doing it a little bit earlier in the process to kind of prevent it all the way through the brewing process. And so you could add it at bottling or packaging, but I do it at mash, and I think ever since doing that, it has really proven itself to like, hey, you know what? This has
Right.
stood the test of time. I don't really worry about it when I do bottle for competitions and stuff. I don't purge all the bottles with oxygen. I just make sure that I fill them up and cap them on foam and stuff. So I'm a little
Okay.
less careful, but I think it helps because of the ascorbic acid I add. So maybe it's just a feel good for me, but I bought one bag in my life and I'm still using it. So you
I
only
was
use
gonna
a
say
little
it's
bit each time.
cheap, right? It's like 10
Very cheap.
bucks, something like that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not a lot of
Yeah. 10
money.
bucks for like a pound of it. You might keep that for a
Yeah.
couple years. Yep.
So let's see. I was gonna skip my questions real quick. So yeah, I know you seem to make a lot of like more like the use of the IPA side of things. As you were developing or refining the recipe for the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, like how many iterations did you go through it? Because I actually end up, I don't know the reason why I bring it up. I made that for my competition beer, which I
Hmm.
think helped me win my
Yeah.
trophy. Which
Good.
kind of so I guess I just want to take a moment. So when I made that, I didn't even taste what this year's Sierra Nevada tasted like.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I poured off a pint. I'm like, oh, this is so good. Went out and I bought a 6 pack. I'm like, this sucks. This is not even close. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the clone beer competition. I probably should have tasted it first. But oh well. I end up
Yeah.
winning just by a smidge. I think it was just by a couple points. But anyways,
That's
I'll
good.
let you
Yeah.
talk all that.
Brewing is just trial and error, and some of it's
Yeah.
just experience of doing it for a little while, but also it's just also like I don't ever reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you can go on and learn some things from Sierra Nevada themselves. They actually have their recipes for some of their beers on their website. So does Bell's Brewery, right? They have all their stuff. Actually, you can buy Bell's yeast and some of their kits and stuff right on there. And I've learned to harvest yeast out of their bottles. It's all different kinds of cool stuff. But the for the Sierra Nevada specifically, I kind of started with their Celebration Ale clone, because I love the Celebration Ale. It comes out every October and around Christmas, and it's like a maltier version of their pale ale, basically a little bit more hoppy, and they use fresh hops that come right off the vine and before they dry them and stuff, right? And so I did that one first, and so but I use some of the information that I got on their website. So you can kind of see like their recipe. They mostly it's like 92% two row, right? And then it's like 8% or less of like crystal, and that's it. It's very simple. And so I was like, well, if I up the crystal a little bit, add a little bit of, care pills for some head retention, maybe we can get it dark enough for like this the celebration ale. And so I kind of did that, and I added a little bit of um I can't even remember. I have to look back at the recipe, but I've added a little bit to kind of try and get in the same kind of color category, and
Mm-hmm.
then and then I looked on their website and I say, okay, well, Sierra Nevada's Pale Ale uses all Cascade hops, and so I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, they definitely use Cascade hops, probably a majority of them in here. This is like a maltier version, but I started, even doing a couple of Google searches, you'll find some articles from Sierra Nevada talking about this celebration ale because it's such a cool thing they come out with in the wintertime, and they're like, yeah, we use a variety of Chinook hops and Cascade hops and Centennial hops. And I'm like, well, there you go. You know which ones they got here now, right? So now it's kind of a matter of just kind of playing around by plugging them into like a recipe builder and getting to a similar IBU
Right.
and that
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? And so I was trying to use like a mix of all of those different hops throughout the boil and try to get to the IBU. And then of course, I'm not a professional brewer, and they have fresher hops than we get as home brewers.
Mm-hmm.
By the time we get those pellets, they're like a couple years old or whatever, right? And so I knew I was going to end up having a little less aroma and stuff. And the first year I did that, I filmed it. I put it on there and I got it really close. And I knew I wasn't there, but I did tell about like what the differences I was tasting. I was like, this one's a little bit overly malty. It doesn't quite have as much of an aroma, that kind of stuff. And then so the next year I redid it. And so I put that one on there also. Both of these videos are on my channel,
Mhm.
and I did it. And the next one I nailed it. I mean, that beer was the same beer. I mean, it was great. And then it's funny that I'm bragging and patting myself on the back, but on one of the one of the magazines that came out for Zymergy, they actually printed the recipe for Celebration Ale
Okay, yeah.
in their thing, and it was almost exactly what I changed in my
There you
recipe.
go.
And
Yeah.
so I used that to kind of create the clone I made of
Mhm.
the Sierra Nevada's pale ale, because one of the things that just a regular pale ale that I think a lot of people want to make, and one of the things that I did the second version, I changed the yeast up a little bit to have more of a citrusy flavored yeast. A lot of people will use a clean ale like a USO5 or an O01, but I really strongly encourage people to venture past those. And although they're good, they have their place for certain beers. A lot of the reason you like a beer the way you like it, and the reason it gives you some of the hot flavors and other things that you might
Mhm.
get from a craft beer, is because of the yeast, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so Kolsch's, for instance, a lot of the flavor you're getting from that, because there's not a lot to the beer
Mhm.
itself,
Mhm.
is the yeast itself, right? And so a lot of that has to do with that. And so so I use specifically Omega's West Coast Ale 1. That's
Mhm.
the yeast I use for Sierra Nevada. It's got this like kind of citrusy aftertaste, and it's still a clean ale, very clean,
Right.
very dry yeast. Right. One of the things that they have on their recipe building is like you're mashing at like 152 or 54 or
Mhm.
something. I'm like, no, 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 no. This beer is way drier than that. You want to mash way lower. If you get under the 150 for mash temperatures, you're drier, you're cleaner, you're crisper. It'll let those hops kind of shine through. So I actually mash in at like 148, like really
Mhm.
low. And that helped get it that same kind of crispness the first time. Crispness, not Christmas, crispness, and let those kind of bitterness and those hops kind of shine through. And I didn't change the grain recipe from my one first year of doing this Sierra Nevada Celebration Ale to the second
Mhm.
year. I just changed the mash temperature. That's it. And it
Okay.
was wildly different, way less malty, that kind of thing. So I try to play around with it, but yeah, sometimes
Mm.
it takes me two or three versions of a beer to get it. And sometimes it's just a lot of research up front to see if I know if I'm going to brew that beer, I want to see if I can get it as close to as possible. And and you're not always going to get it perfect, but if you can get it
Yeah.
drinkable, you've created a cool new beer yourself.
So have you ever come up with like through your experimenting, so like you're trying to target say beer X, and then all of a sudden you
Mhm.
make it like, hey, this is nothing like beer X, but this is so much better than what beer X was.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I rarely brew the same beer. I do brew some of the same beers. My wife likes sours and stuff, and I always generally keep those the same. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to take a recipe that I might find online. I'll just be
Mhm.
searching different ones, or maybe I'll try to find a clone of a certain beer that somebody's made. And I don't know if that person who's trying to clone it did it right. I have no idea. Right. So what I'll do is I'll look through all the different recipes and see if there's similarities between all of them, right? Like this one, again, it looks like all of them are using Vienna malt and this other malt, right? All of them. So I know at least I'm going to use those two things in there. All of them seem to use these three hops or whatever,
Right.
right? So I kind of go that route. But sometimes I'll use it as just like a starting point. I'll start
Mm.
with that, and then I'll like, you know what, I think would be good at this. I'm going to switch it and add, this different hop. I'll start with like maybe the Sierra Nevada thing, and instead of
Right.
using, Cascade, I'll use a bunch of like New Zealand hops and make it like really like this kind of citrus bomb, whatever, or change the yeast around or something like that,
Mhm.
and just check it out. Sometimes it's worse, and sometimes it's better, and sometimes it's a happy accident, right?
Right.
Sometimes I'll just look. I'm fortunate enough to still live close to a homebrew supply store here in Charlotte called Alternative Beverage, and I go there, and I really appreciate it. Hope they do always well. I will always support local when I can, but the I go there and I just kind of look through the yeasts, and I find one that I maybe not even heard of before, and I'll start like looking it up on my phone or read what it says on the back, or whatever, and maybe I'm like, I'm gonna brew with this one. And so one of the things that I like to do when I was really first getting into all grain brewing was
Mhm.
brewing smash beers.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
smash beers single malt and single hop is what it stands for, and it kind of lets you kind of see what that malt, what the hop, and what that yeast really tastes like because you're only using the one of each. And so the I like Maris Otter a lot. It gives it a little bit more flavor than
Yeah.
like a two row, for instance. So I'll use that a lot of times. But I will add a yeast I've never done, but maybe a hop I'm familiar with, and then I'll see how that
Mm.
really tastes in just a really low complexity beer, like a smash beer. And some of them are just great beers to drink, especially in the summer. They're usually like light, crisp beers. You don't have to make them overly bitter. You can just make a pretty standard, dry or regular hop um, bill, and then all of a sudden, you add this different yeast in there. One of the happy accidents I did was using Verdant yeast. I didn't intend to use that for a hazy IPA, and I really liked it. It was really good,
Huh.
and that's because they didn't have the one I wanted at the homebrew supply store. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll just try this one, I guess. But it was great. It was great.
Yeah. See, that's how I kind of feel about hops. Like, there's so many different variety of hops that come out. There's like when the what was it, the Atlantic Homebrew supply store when they shut down, was it last year or the year
Yeah,
before
yeah,
last? Like, I got there late. All they had left were hops. So I probably
yeah.
bought, oh, I don't know, maybe 5 pounds of different hops altogether. And like some don't even have names. They just are like
Right.
three. And I was like, has papaya
Experimental
notes.
hops,
I'm
right?
like,
Yeah,
okay. So I guess I'm gonna make a papaya IPA with you one day whenever I get a
yeah.
chance to.
And I got, I have a whole bunch of those. I'll go to like different events and stuff, and they'll have sponsors from different hop,
Oh, that'd be
whatever's,
fun.
and they'll have
Yeah.
little giveaways, and they have a lot of those experimental ones. And every year around Christmas time, right before Christmas, I do like a giveaway on my channel, and I'll give away a lot of those little samples.
Oh
So
man.
there'll be little weird ones that'll be like, this one's like lemongrass and something else, and this one's like whatever, but if you like it, you can still buy them. And a lot of those experimental hops, they'll start with like HBC something. So like
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
and then a number. And for a long time, some of the before they name a hop like a Citra or a Cascade or something like that. I mean, obviously those have been around for a long time. They start with a number. And
Mm,
they cross pollinate different hops and they see which ones they like. They describe the flavors based on like the oils that are in each hop
mhm.
plant, and then they say, okay, here's what this one should taste like and smell like, and that kind of stuff. And then if they like it and it kind of takes off, they name it. And so, Crush hops was a more recent one they just did with Crush with a K, and I did a video on those, and it used to be like HBC 586 or something like that. And a lot of people knew it by that for a long time because they were like, man, these hops are awesome. They're really good. They're like almost like a bubblegummy flavor kind of thing. And so I brewed a beer last Valentine's Day, so it was about a year ago, and I said it my secret crush hops, right? So yeah,
There
yeah.
you
So
go. That's
I
awesome.
did that one. This is the beer love of your life right here. So um that was great. I did that. I was trying to make my videos a little more funny as I'm getting better at doing video editing.
Right. Yeah.
I'm definitely not a pro, but I'm trying to do
No,
it.
me
So even
neither.
my last one I brewed with my buddy Adrian, and we brewed that this one beer that I'm actually kind of drinking right now called Beer Pressure, and it was funny, man. We were just laughing the
Oh,
whole time.
oh, watch that one. That was a good one. Yeah, you guys did a good
Yeah,
job.
yeah, yeah. We just, I mean, and I started telling him, I was like, I'm just gonna leave in some of these things, like bees are flying in our face in the middle of the video and stuff. And so I was like, I just left that stuff in there and try to make it funny. Um, and I think that's kind of the entertainment value that some people would think like, oh, I got to cut this out. They just want to hear about beer brewing. It's like, no, there's some entertainment value with watching somebody do this and learning a little bit about how you brew the beer.
Yeah. It's,
So,
it's so it's kind of like with these as well too. I don't edit a whole lot unless like
mhm,
some technical glitch happens, or like even when
sure.
you ask like, oh, it did I lose you or whatever. I'm still gonna leave that in. Like
Yeah.
it's not gonna hurt anything because it's only
It's real
like
life.
it's a couple seconds. It's not a big thing. There was one that comes out I think next Monday where like there's like dead air. So I actually
Uh,
take like that. I think it's like the Benny Hill song, and I put like this little like technical
yeah.
issue thing pops up or whatever. But that's what I got kind of cute with it, because like I
Yeah,
said, this does take a while to do, and
it
yeah,
does.
I'm trying to make shorts and clips and da 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 da. And yeah, it's another full time job.
It is, and you do get better at it, over time the time of doing it, but it takes a while. Like, it
Yeah.
almost takes me just as long to make the video as it does to edit the video, a couple hours of
Yeah.
brewing and stuff and a couple hours of video editing. So it's a process. Sometimes I even just like I take a day off from work and I just video edit all day because I've got like 3 videos I got to do, and I'm not going to do them if I'm just, or I'm never going to see my family if I just do them at night, during the week
Mhm.
sometimes. So once in a while, just like, I'm just going to take a day off work. I'm going to crush out like 3 of these videos I need to do, which is something I need to do soon.
Yeah, well,
But
that's perfect, yeah.
yeah, and then just got to get them done. But it is fun. If I didn't like to do it, I wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah.
But it is cool. I try to make it a little more interesting each time, and I try to have
Mhm.
more people on them than just me. As much as people like seeing me, it's more fun to see other people and do different things. And I'm trying to get in the realm of doing not just like brewing videos every time. So I used to do a lot more tips and tricks stuff than I do now. So I'm going to try to do a little bit
Mhm.
more of that this year. I'm also getting into, and I know the Brew Show did this, but I'm getting into like 3D printing stuff a lot.
Okay,
And
yeah, yeah,
so,
yeah.
yeah, I started toying around with this year. I brought this on to kind of show. I made this
Okay.
flight thing with my logo. It's kind of hard to
Oh,
see right there, but you can see my logo and my name on the top there.
that's
Um,
cool.
and this is one I didn't really find a version of this online. I just made this out of like
Mhm.
on a program called Fusion 360, and I was able to just tell like the size of the rings and stuff I needed and kind of build it. So I'm getting a little bit better at just kind of hand making some things versus just finding stuff and printing it. But there are a lot of cool
There
things for
are.
beer brewing
Yeah.
on 3D printing. It's like
Yeah.
it's amazing how much stuff for just brewing related. So I toy around with that a little bit. When I should be video editing, I'm printing stuff on my 3D printer.
There's nothing wrong with that. Oh,
Yeah,
man,
yeah,
that's all I say. I have a 3D printer as well too. I have a good friend of mine who has like 4 or 5 of them, and he just gave me one. He's like, "Here." He was trying to get me more into the hobby so we could have more things to kinda do together.
yeah,
I just find stuff online that I think is cool and just print stuff out, but, yeah, I've typed in, like, homebrew stuff and just like you said, there's just a plethora of different things out there.
yeah.
I
My tap
printed
handles behind me are
Yep,
are 3D printed, right?
that's
Yep.
what I did. I printed, I'm a big Star Wars nerd. I'm born in '77, so I'm that old.
Yeah,
So I printed like, I had a Darth Vader one for a while. I had a Boba Fett, tap handle. I mean, they all broke because like I didn't
yeah.
understand like temperature control and all that kind of stuff with the 3D printer as well too, and
Mhm.
layer thickness and all that kind of stuff. The difference between what is that PETG and PLA and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and they're all
right, right,
different. And so like that's a whole new
right.
learning thing as well too. So it's really cool
Yeah,
that we're all a bunch of nerds. I guess at the end of the day, is I guess what I'm trying to say. But I did want to
yeah.
ask, do you have like a house beer at all, or is it you're always going toward like the next thing constantly? Besides, I know you said sours for the wife. I didn't know if like I like this. I'm just gonna make this bulk of the time.
Yeah, no, I don't really make that for my standard brews. I will make, like I said, the sours. I do the same recipe. I just change the fruit that I do in them. I usually do a cranberry ginger one around the holidays because cranberries are in season, and stuff. My wife likes a blackberry sour I do, and I do a raspberry one almost every year because I think it's just the ones that she likes a lot. But I've
Hmm.
I've switched it up. I've done a key lime pie version. I've done a mango, but the base recipes are basically the same. I just change kind of what the stuff I put in with it.
Yeah.
So those are kind of cool for people who aren't really craft beer or hoppy beer drinkers. But I do switch it up. So I will do seasonal beers. Actually, I'm doing a uh right around probably the time this comes out in March. I'm doing a Irish beer, but I'm gonna do a Guinness clone. So I'm gonna do a
Okay.
Guinness. I'm actually gonna get a nitro canister and do. I have
Hmm.
a nitro tap handle, so I'm gonna actually put it on nitro and everything and do Guinness. And so I'll do porters, and sometimes I'll do like mix it with some vanilla or
Hmm.
um, uh, I do a one with coconut flakes, coconut porter. It's awesome, really, really good. And so it depends on the time of the year. I try to do some more seasonal stuff
Hmm.
around like
Hmm.
fall. I'll try to do something that's either like a fest beer, a Vienna lager, or a Marzen style or something
Hmm.
like that. So it's not always IPAs, even though I do generally gravitate towards those, I think. But it seems like also those are the ones that people get when they go to the if you go to a brewery, people are like, oh, I'm sick of seeing so many hazy IPAs or regular IPAs or whatever. But that's what people buy. and so they
Mhm.
make it because people
Yeah.
buy them, right? So it's like, yeah, I would like to also see everybody have a Schwarz beer on, but that's just
Ooh,
not gonna
yeah.
sell, right?
No, yeah.
That's not gonna
Such a
sell. I
weird
love a
beer.
good Schwarz beer. Yeah. I made a Schwarz beer on the channel with my
Mhm.
buddy, and we did that was the one where we dressed up like the Yeasty Boys instead of the Beastie Boys, and we made
Love
a
it. I love it.
yeah, did some dance moves that you do not want to see me dancing in that video. So that one we did a Schwarz beer, but again, it's like it doesn't even do that well on the channel because not a lot of people like know what a Schwarz beer really is. It's a dark lager. It's a delicious beer, but
Yeah, it
the
is.
breweries just aren't going to brew that because people are not going to know what it is when they go up and read
Mm,
the board. So a
yeah.
lot of times they'll just call them like dark lager or something like that, and try to get people to buy it that way. But yeah, from a craft brew standpoint, I would love it. I'd be like, oh, I'm trying that. How many times you see that on a
Exact
tap list, right?
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just what the people like, and it's kind of like that somewhat for the channel. Um, I like to drink those anyway, so I brew them, but I don't want them all to be like hazy IPAs, right? I don't want them to be all
Right, yeah.
IPAs in general, but so I try to mix it up. But the ones that are a little bit less common just
Mhm,
also do a little worse for the video too. But I do it anyway because I want there to be a variety of stuff that
mhm.
people can find on YouTube, right?
Well, it's a
So
library that you're essentially
yeah,
curating, right, for the most part,
that's right.
so that's kinda what hopefully this is gonna be as well too, is be a library of different people who are in the beer world, cider world, wine world, whoever wants to come and chit chat, come on,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll chit chat.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So I do want to talk about. So we talked about the sours a few different times. So you did a competition with the raspberry sour, and you won
Yeah,
second place with that. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Like
sure.
how did that kind of come about? Where was the competition at?
Yeah, so North Georgia Malt Monkeys does their North Georgia competition. It's a regional competition into the southeast region of a Homebrewers Association, and so they do it. I think it's in uh, no, it's not July. It's August every month. So I think you submit in August, and every year. About the summertime, I start either doing a blackberry or a raspberry sour. And the year that I got second place best of show for that one, last year I got first place in the category, but I didn't get second place best of show for the same beer, but it's just a different year.
Mm,
It's actually the plaque you can see behind me. That one right
okay,
there is
yeah,
the
that's
one.
cool.
That's the second place best of show one. I should have picked it up and showed you, but that one I did when my mom and dad were coming down from Minnesota to visit. And my mom loved it. But she was drinking these little like half pour type beers, and I was like, Mom, be careful. It's like 7%. She's just drinking like, light beers, and stuff. And she's like, no, I'm only drinking half pours. I'm like, yeah, but if you drink 16 of them, it's still 8 beers, Mom. Like that's
Exactly. Yep.
no, I'm just kidding. And I all, the feedback I got, I knew I had a good beer, obviously. And so I entered it in the competition. I did not expect to get second place best of show.
Mhm,
I knew that it would had a chance, for fruit beers
mhm,
categories
mhm,
of medaling, which I had for other styles before,
mhm.
but that was the first time I had ever gotten a second place best of show, and they had like 350 or 400 entries in that
Holy
competition
crap!
too. That's a bigger one, and so it was cool. They sent me a big box of stuff back for. I think Inkbird was a supplier or
Mhm.
a sponsor, excuse me, not supplier, sponsor of that, and they had a vacuum sealer I won from them that they
Mm,
sent for winning second place best of show, and they also sent a bunch of different like swag things. Some I got some taster glasses that had the brewery that they did like the final reading, at
mhm.
the award show, if they will, at, and then some different stickers, and they also sent me some of the beers since they were sending me a big box of stuff anyway. Some of the beers and meads and things that they had
Oh, that'd be
left
awesome.
over. And
Yeah.
so I was able to try some of the beers that got submitted into the competition, including that one of the organizers, he does a lot of meads, and he sent me a couple of his specifically to try out. I'm like, oh yeah, these are fantastic. So I did share a lot of those with my homebrew club. I was like, I don't want to drink it and these all myself, even though I would. I was like, let me bring them in and kind of share them with people we can all taste them together. We
Mhm, mhm.
all can try, 8 different ones instead of me just hoarding them at my house, which I would have done too because they were good. And I don't brew mead, so I think it's kind of cool once in a while to try different things like that. I
Mhm.
do brew some hard ciders every
Oh,
once in a
yeah,
while.
I
Do
love
a
ciders.
yep, and then I've done a seltzer before. I don't know if I don't think I did a video on that one, but that's super easy. Then I did oh, what did I brew? A weird thing the other year. It'll come to me in a minute. But so I'll try to venture out of beer a little bit. I used to brew wine back in the day.
Okay.
Too before I got into beer brewing, my mom and dad made a couple batches of wine, and I did a few batches with a buddy of mine. Um, and it's funny, his last name was Berg, and
Mhm.
me being D Fields, so we called it Burgundy Fields.
Oh,
And so
love it. It's
yeah,
great.
Berg and D Fields, right? So
Yeah.
and we made a couple wine, I think we did like a Pinot Grigio or something like that, and a Pinot Noir or whatever. And so those are the kits too, obviously that kind of
Mhm,
thing. So this is
mhm.
my first kind of experience brewing, so I have done other things, but there are other channels for wine and there are other channels for mead specifically. So I try to
Yeah.
stay in my lane a little bit with beer, but I'll do a hard cider every once in a while. I think it's pretty
Mhm.
good. I do like watching some of the stuff that like Trent from the Brew Show puts on. He does
Yeah.
like different depaches and different weird stuff, and like
Mhm.
I do have a video for making ginger, like a hard ginger beer and ginger beers that you can do for just
Okay.
making like Moscow
Yeah.
mules and stuff that I'm going to put out this spring. So I'm working on that video right now. So I'm getting into different things, but I try to stay mostly in the realm of beer. Um, but yeah, the sours are really cool. I don't think I would have liked doing those, but they're a little bit different animal. I think it's a little less intimidating for people because you don't have to do the traditional overnight kettle souring as much.
Okay.
Um, you can use a product either there's two products that Lallemand makes. One is called Cervisier, which is like
Mhm.
a lot more sour, and the other one is Philly sour. To me, that one tastes a little more like red apple-ish tart.
Okay.
So it just adds a little bit of tartness, but it's not overly sour. Cervisier is overly sour, and you
Okay.
actually kind of have to mix that with a little bit of USO5 to kind of tame it down a little bit. But that's the one I still got second place or first place last year for the raspberry sour. I just didn't get second place best of show, but I used Cervisier instead of the kettle sour the
Mhm.
year before. So it still had a similar result, but it's a little bit less. If I had to put it one way, it's the Cervisier. You have a little bit less control with how sour it gets because you're just kind of souring during fermentation, and you can't really stop it. Like once it eats all the sugars, it's going to be however sour it's going to be, type of thing, right? So
Gotcha,
sometimes it's going to be a little
yeah.
too much sour, a little bit less. Where the kettle souring, you kind of measure for the sourness, and then you stop that souring process the second day. So there's videos on how to do all that stuff on my channel. If people want to learn how to kettle sour, it's a pretty easy process. It's just a little extra work for letting it sit overnight and then sour.
That's interesting,
So
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Have you ever used, what is that called? Like the Good Belly or anything like that to do
yeah,
like yeah, yeah.
so that's how I used to do the kettle souring. One thing that I'm glad you brought that up. So Goodbelly recently changed what like um bacteria is in their Goodbelly product to sour. It used to be called Lactobacillus planetarium, and now it's something else, and I can't remember what it is. But somebody mentioned this to me the other day, and I need to look into it a little bit more. But it might be something that could affect your equipment a little bit more. So, like
Mm,
the Lactobacillus did not do that, and they do. But now they do sell from Lallemand. They do sell a packet called Wild Pitch, which is Lactobacillus planetarium, and you only need about a fourth of that packet. So it's like a $28 packet. Seems like it's really expensive, but used it 4 times. So if you break it down, it's really no more than buying like a 32-ounce carton of Good Belly, which is like 5 or 6, $8 or something like that, right?
mhm, mhm,
And but the Good Belly, I don't know this for sure, but I got to look into the type of bacteria that's in there because there are certain bacteria like Brettanomyces
mhm,
that you would use that can affect your equipment. And so once you start using it in a keg or in a fermenter or something like that, that sour bacteria can kind of stick around and it's harder to get rid of, and it can start affecting your other equipment. I don't want people to infecting make all sour beers for the rest of their life because they've made one sour beer. And so
mhm,
I have to do a little bit of research on that. But all my videos do use that either the Cervisier yeast or the Good Belly probiotic. And so I'm going to try to do a follow up video this year about the change to that Good Belly and see if I
mhm.
need to put some disclaimer on those videos now or something, because I don't want people to use them thinking that. But I do tell people in the video what to look for on the label. So like
Right.
if this is on there, you can use it. And so there probably is a different product that's not Good Bellies, but it's still by the yogurts that you could still use
Mhm,
that
mhm.
has that same ingredient in there. So I'll try to find a substitute or see if it's even maybe it's totally fine to use for souring. But That's what I traditionally used, yes, is the Good Belly probiotic. It's just they've changed it recently, so I got to look into that a little
Look
bit.
into it. Yeah, because I've heard that too about the Brett before. I've had one of my homebrew buddies got a hold of it, or somehow he got into his system. He couldn't get rid of it. It was like so bad that he had to start getting rid of equipment. Like he had to get rid of
Yeah,
all of his
yeah.
hoses,
It
his
doesn't matter how much you
brushes.
soak that stuff,
Yeah, so he
sometimes it's
used some
just gonna
type of
live in there.
acid. I forgot what kind of acid he used. Some
Mhm.
acid it wouldn't even kill it. So he's like, I just got to get rid of the stuff. Start over. I forgot how much
There
money he
are
did
there are
throw away.
breweries that did that. I mean, there are whole
Okay,
breweries that accidentally did that, and once you get it in like a hose, and then they accidentally use that hose on a different brew, and all of a sudden their other fermenters are all souring too, and they didn't intend to do that, so they have to be really intentional about what equipment you use for the
that's
souring
crazy,
stuff.
crazy stuff.
Um, yeah, and so when I remember there's a place in Asheville, North Carolina, where I go up to, and it's kind
Hmm.
of like where Sierra Nevada and stuff is, and it's called Wicked Weed Brewing. I don't know if
Oh
they
yeah,
sell that by you.
oh
They
yeah,
say Wicked Weed over by you?
yeah.
Okay.
I get the
So
idea.
Wicked Weed had they got bought out recently, but they had a sour microbrew next to them called the Funkatorium. And the Funkatorium have you been there before? So they had all sour beers, and that's because they bought a bunch of equipment that people had used for souring, and they put it all in a different building. They didn't even want to be in the same building as their normal brewery, so they made a whole different brewery. I don't think the Funkatorium's open anymore. I think it closed, but they use those fermenters and stuff there because they can't use them for anything else. So they're just going to use them, make funky beers and wild bacterias and stuff, and they're just gonna let it ride. And some of the beers were great. Some of them were like Warhead sour, but they were good. We tried some of them, but you can only have like one or two, and then you're gonna get like gut rot from too much
Oh
sourness. But
my gosh, yeah.
yeah,
Ugh,
they were very
low
sour.
pH. Yeah, so I was
Yes.
there a few years ago with my oldest son. We went to Wicked Weed. We went up to somewhere else, and we went up to Highwire. I guess
Yeah.
Highwire did a collab with Wicked Weed, but it wasn't on tap. They just had a keg in the back, and me and my son were standing up at the bar. He was like, "Hey, do you want to try something? We're not really selling it, but we can give you a little sample of it." I was like, "Sure, why
Yeah.
not?" And I'm not a huge sour person, but this was more of a tart, and it was
Sure.
phenomenal. It was so good. I don't remember what they called. They said there was just a one-off weird experiment, whatever they
Yeah.
did. So, yeah, I'm like 45 minutes away from Asheville, so I'm not super
Yeah.
close.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I've
I'm 2 hours on the other side of you. So yeah,
Yeah,
you're even closer than I am.
yeah. So I trade. We used to go there when I first moved down here. We was going there quite often. I don't go there as often as I would like to, but I do try to go there and support their homebrew shop because I don't have any around me. All right.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So the next closest one is Knoxville. Knoxville is about almost 2 hour drive. Right.
Sure. Sure.
So I'd rather just go there. If not, I just buy offline, just not change the subject too much. But
Sure. Sure.
I know they sold it at Asheville Homebrew store, supply store, like a couple years ago. So it's under new ownership and stuff like that. They're really cool guys. I've talked to them. I drop off my
Yeah.
information and say, if you're ever interested, this is my podcast. This is kind of what I do. I would like to
Hmm.
get your side of the story of being or
Yeah.
what homebrew shop is and stuff like that.
I
Just
th-
to
I
kind of
think I think Clawhammer. They sell kits on their website. I think they buy them from them to try to support their local place too. I
Yes, yeah,
think.
they know they
Don't
do.
quote me
Yeah,
on that.
yeah. They always
Okay.
say we're going down here, we're buying all this stuff. Then go back up to their house, which is
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely like to talk to them one day as well too. It makes me kind of cool actually just to go there and hang out with them. But
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
future
I was
project.
Yeah, I talk to them a little more regularly because they've obviously collabed with me about the brew systems and stuff. But and I think they're going to try to do something around HomebrewCon. So HomebrewCon this year is in Asheville,
Asheville, yep, I'm going.
and I think it's June 19th and 20th. I
Yep,
think.
yep.
Don't quote me on that. Is that
You
right?
are, yep,
Okay.
yep. It's Friday, Saturday. I'm going to be there that
Yep.
Thursday night, and
Okay.
'cause I've already
That's
talked to
I am
like a
too.
few people on here
Hmm.
that I've already interviewed. They want to try to meet up. I said, well, maybe we meet up that Thursday night and we'll go somewhere. We'll go like
Yeah.
burial, we'll go high wire, wherever you guys want. We'll
But
just check
yeah.
out a couple places and we'll do
That'd be a
HomebrewCon.
good weekend for the breweries, I tell you that. And
Oh gosh,
restaurants and
yeah.
everything else. It'll be good.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm planning on doing the same thing. I've talked to a bunch of the I guess brew tubers, if you will,
Hmm.
the guys that have homebrew channels, and I think Trent from the Brew Show's going, and me and Clawhammer guys, of course, I think are trying to set up a some type of get together meetup. So we'll
That'd be
see what
awesome.
we'll try to release some information about that as we get a little bit closer, but
Yeah.
nothing's set in stone just yet. And I think
No.
they're trying to collab with those guys from the AHA. So it'll be really fun. I'm glad it's close this year so everybody can make it from this side of I think it's
Mm,
always been historically in other areas. I think last time was in Denver, maybe.
I think the closest one I remember to us would have been Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
I think that was one
I
of the
think
closest ones,
maybe
so
it was
that's been
just
a
last year's
while.
in Denver.
Might have
Yeah.
been, yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited about it. It's gonna be cool. I know a lot of people on my channel are like, yeah, if I come, are you gonna do a little meet and greet thing too? I'm like, yeah, let's. But I think we're gonna try to do it with like a bunch of other people so they can meet all the people
Hell
that they
yeah,
want to
that'd
meet
be
from the
awesome.
different channels too.
Yeah.
So you definitely we'll keep you in the loop.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. So I do have one question that kind of related to HomebrewCon because there'd be judging a lot of beer there, obviously. So you said you've done a lot of informal judging. Now, are you on your pursuit to become a BJCP judge, or is that you just gonna stick where you're at for right now?
Yeah, I'm kind of sticking where I'm at. I probably could. I don't know. I've ever really thought about ever going through and getting tested. I probably could go and get tested right away. I have a pretty decent palate for that kind of stuff already. So I have judged kind of informally several different times, including for one that a local there's a different homebrew club that's called the Carolina Brewmasters, and they do a regional competition called the U.S. Open in June every year
Mhm.
in the Southeast, and so I will help judge that a lot of times with their club. So we do a lot of different cross club stuff because there's several of them in my area.
That's awesome.
And so there's like 5 of us that are meeting actually Sunday morning to kind of talk about like, hey, if you want to do some different events or get-togethers or meetups for the different
Mhm.
clubs, like what should we do this year? So we're all kind of talking together on Sunday, and I meet a lot of them judging because we go to these different events and stuff. And so
Mhm.
I don't do it all the time.
Gotcha.
There are people who are BJCP certified, so they like to get those guys to go all the way down to like Asheville and or not Asheville, but Atlanta and everything, even for like the
Mhm.
Malt Monkeys ones and stuff. And so it would be good to eventually do that. I usually do get paired with somebody who is BJCP certified, but it is kind of interesting even to help steward or anything. So even if you're not or you're kind of a novice, is that they're going to pair you with somebody who knows what they're doing. Number one, and it helps you kind of hone in and see if you get those same type of flavors or feedback because you both taste, you both kind of do this, and then you discuss it a little bit, and you do learn stuff from the other
Mhm.
person. Like I found that the guy I got paired with last year, he was a I think he's even a cicerone. I mean, he was crazy good, but
Mm.
he knew he could not taste diacetyl. Like he's not very prone to it. He can't pick it up very well, but I could, and he's like, "Hold on, I think you're right, but I can't taste it very well." So I know a guy, he's across the room. I'm gonna have him taste this thing. And he's like, he comes back, "Yep, diacetyl bomb. You're 100% right." And like, so, but he can't pick it up and he just knows his weakness, right? Like everybody's palate's a little bit different. So it is cool. You learn a lot. You taste a lot of good beers, a lot of not so good beers, but also you can, especially as much as I've been doing this now, home brewing, you can kind of critique a little bit and maybe say, okay, well, if you were to take the same thing and maybe change
Mhm.
the mass temperature or maybe a little more hops or a little bit this or change this about a recipe, you can kind of give people some feedback
Right.
about maybe how to match the style better. So one thing that's different about judging versus just brewing a big beer, you're not trying to or brewing a good beer, you're not trying to say, is this a good beer? Would I drink it? I mean, yes, but you're matching it to the style guidelines. So it could be a fantastic beer, but it scores really low because it's actually not in the category you put it in, right? So a wise man at one of these events once told me, I brew a beer and then the beer tells me what category it's in. Yeah. So so you can brew an IPA all day, and if it tastes more like a pale ale, you put it in the pale ale category, right? Or something like that, right?
Yep,
Or
yep.
he actually won first place in a national homebrew competition, the AHA competition, and he was trying to brew a different beer and entered it as a black IPA and won first place.
There you
Isn't
go.
that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like, this beer wasn't that. It was something different. And so when I tasted it, I just matched the style guidelines, and he got first place at a beer. He did not try to brew that style beer and got first place nationally in the
Yeah.
competition.
So I've
Isn't that crazy?
not heard that story. I've
Yeah.
heard this before. Like you go to your homebrew club with your beer, you don't tell them what it is. You have everyone taste it, and they're like, "Oh, I think it's this." And you're like going, "Cool." Then you enter that beer into the competition as what they say it is. I've heard that a few
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. And so like you could make a beer that's like overly roasty or something like that, and you didn't intend it to be, but it could like, hey, now it's more like in this your Roush beer category, like it's not smoky, I guess. But like, you could you
Yeah,
could
I
you
get
could
you
try
saying.
to, you can kind of steer it into a different category. You might be going for a Marzen, but it's less malty or something, and now all of a sudden it becomes a better amber ale or something,
Mhm.
and so there are happy accidents in
Guys,
brewing, and
100%.
so you could be steering it with there, like this beer that I just poured like a half glass a lot ahead because I didn't tilt the glass at all, but this is made with rye actually, and I
Mm,
don't do a lot of beer with rye, but this one turned out
that's a
fantastic. But
beautiful color.
rye has a spicy flavor, right? And
Mhm.
so this one I'm doing for a different competition that I'm having over, that I've submit some beers for this weekend. That's just a local thing, and we had to use rye as a secret ingredient, and you have to be able to taste it and pick it out. So you couldn't just like mask a little bit of rye in there, like you want it to be prominent. But this, so I'm calling this one Ridiculous Rye PA.
Right, right. I love it. That's a
Yeah.
great
So,
name.
so that one we're submitting this weekend, and then they kind of blind taste test them at
Mm,
Noda Brewing Company in Charlotte. So
mhm.
that's where we're dropping off the beers, and then they have to. We're doing a showcase event on the 17th of February, then to kind of share this with the public and get like general feedback. But
Right.
they've already tasted it, picked kind of a winner out, and stuff,
Mhm, mhm.
and then that winner gets to brew at the brewery.
Well, that
So
is
at
so cool.
Noda,
Oh,
so
that'd
it's
be so
cool.
much
Yeah,
fun. Yeah, but
yeah.
yeah, I've missed out on a couple opportunities, that they brew. Some friends of mine, they had a brewery. They just shut down sadly in November. Things
Hmm.
happen, life happened, whatever. But there was opportunities that just never really came to fruition. But I thought that would be so cool to brew at a large scale, right? Like now I've
Yeah,
done five
yeah,
gallon batch. Like, what's it feel like to do a barrel, whole barrel? Like, like
yeah.
what does scaling look like? Because I heard it's not
It's
as
wildly
linear.
different.
Yeah, I heard it's not
Yeah,
linear like you think it is, right? So
yeah.
be kind of
So,
interesting.
yeah, it's so a lot of people will say, "Well, okay, you're using this many grains, and this much water, so
Mhm,
you're doing this," but you're really you're not really measuring the amounts and scaling it up because of the amount of liquid you're using. It's trying to hit the same IBUs, SRMs, that kind of thing, rather than you're scaling up. Like if you're using 10 pounds of grains, then you must also use 10 and you're doing it 10 times size, you're using 100 pounds of grains. Well, it's not quite like that, right? And so they're putting your recipe into their larger system, but they're just trying to match the SRM. They're going to get different uh, efficiencies because
mhm.
they're a professional brewery that has, a lot better
Oh, yeah.
equipment. And so instead of you getting, 70, 75%, they're going to get like 90+% efficiency. So they're really just trying to say, okay, yeah, we're going to use the same percentages of grains, but
Mhm, mm.
we're going to use our own scale to match the SRM, to match the IBUs, and for your hops, all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to see the difference. Now, I didn't help him necessarily put all that together, but he explained why we're using this many hops when and that kind of
Mhm,
stuff because XYZ. So it is good. It depends on who you brew with on there, but I think a lot of brewers they started out homebrewing.
mhm.
I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's a thing. So they love to share the knowledge. They love it. And so the most of the our actual Upper Palmetto Zymergy Society club started 9 breweries. And so
Really? Wow.
our club members have started 9 local breweries in the area here that went on to be super successful. Some of them sadly did not make it. Some of them did. So we're kind of proud about the fact that like, hey, this can be a thing, but not for everybody, but it can be a thing for some people if you want it to be. But it got to be where, they're starting to cannibalize themselves, and the ones that have good food and other things and a better atmosphere
Mhm.
kind of
Yeah.
win out in the end of the day. But I always do appreciate the little hole in the walls that still have some good, like you said, the Schwarz beer, or maybe the random
Yep.
beer you don't see, or the Kolsch's or something like that on tap. Yep.
But the first time I made that, I took that to a buddy of mine up north. I was like, he's like, what is this? Like, it's just a black lager. He's like, but it looks like a porter or a stout. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's dark. And so he's like, he's staring at it, he's looking at it, and he's smelling it. Then he takes a drink. He's like nothing's matching. I was like, no, it doesn't, but it's
Yeah.
so good.
That's kind of when the first time I made a black IPA, it's like that. It is dark like a
Mm,
porter, right? But now you're getting if you were to like close your eyes, you're almost getting like this still piney, citrusy, like whatever, but you don't think dark at all. If somebody blindfolded you and you tasted this beer, you
yep.
wouldn't think like it's gonna be dark as the night, right?
Right.
And it's kind of funny because my last one I just called the Dark Knight because I used the Justice League of dark malts, and I used 3 different malts in it, dark malts, and so I called it the Justice League. But so I've done a couple different black IPAs, and they're great, especially good winter beers, but because they do have a little bit of roasty character in the
Mhm.
background, and maybe a little, you could even have like a hint of chocolate, but there's still this like bitter, um, citrusy, almost sometimes that piney floral resin in there, but but it's very different than like a porter or a stout or something like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
But you close your eyes and you open it, you're like, this is not a dark beer. Like, what am I drinking here?
Right, what is this thing? It is
Yeah,
abomination.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm gonna move over to like a little like advice section since you are like a YouTuber educator
yeah.
for the most part. So I kind of have this broken out into like different sections. So we're gonna start with like kind of like the new brewer. So if
Okay.
someone's listening right now and thinking about brewing their first batch, like what kind of advice would you give them? Kind of steer them where to start with.
Sure. I mean, there's nothing wrong with starting with a kit, right?
Mm,
Whether that's if you're doing extract kits, all grain kits, doesn't matter. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Just kind of get the process down, like learn the process itself. So if it's all grain, it's all grain. If it's extract, I'd probably suggest maybe doing an extract first, just to, so you kind of get the idea of the fermentation part of it.
mm,
But really, you could some people jump right into all grain. It's just, I don't want people to go overwhelmed right off the bat. But if you're new to it, like there's number one, watch some people do the channels and stuff like that. Like I even have a video on, I know I do a lot of all grain brews, but there's extract brews on my channel. There's extract brews on other channels. Like watch and learn a little
mm.
bit before you try it the first time.
Yep.
And then also like, don't be intimidated or don't feel bad to ask questions. I mean, the whole reason I kind of started doing the live videos that I do every other Sunday
Hmm.
ish.
Hmm.
I say ish because once in a while I'll skip one, but the is to kind of give back and create this kind of community that's not afraid of asking questions. We watch these videos on YouTube all the time, but you never really get to ask that
Hmm.
person questions, right? You never
Right.
get to like pick their brain. And I'm an open book, right? So I tell people, ask all the questions you want in the chat. If I don't know it, chances are somebody in the chat will
Hmm.
know it, right?
Hmm.
Or somebody will comment on the video later or know it, or I'll look it up in real time and we'll talk about it, right? If
Right.
I don't know it, I will be honest. Um, or at least fuddle, my way through it to try to pretend like
Yeah.
I know what I'm talking
Hmm.
about.
Hmm.
But no, but sometimes I just don't know. Like sometimes I'm just, like, hey, I don't brew that style very often, so let me look it up. But here's what I would do if I did, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's no such thing as a dumb question, and I always encourage people to ask questions because I had a million of them when I first got
Hmm.
started,
Oh yeah.
and if I can prevent you from second guessing yourself on brew day, let's do it, right? And so if you're not sure like how much water you should use, there's calculators for that. We'll show you how to
Hmm.
use one, right? There's different things. So part of it is just learn as much as you can when you get started. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and
Right.
don't be afraid to fail because you're gonna mess up.
Hmm.
You're gonna definitely
Hmm.
mess up, right? And so
Hmm.
if you watch a couple of the tips and tricks that I've done some for, 5 things you need to know, like even as a new brewer, like one of them is just start with something that is easy. You don't
Hmm.
have to go out and try to make the world's weirdest 15 ingredient beer, right? You start with like a pale ale or something easy, or something
Hmm.
like don't, and I wouldn't start with lagers because they are a little
Yeah.
more finicky because they have temperature control requirements. But you can also buy yeast that you can just stick in the bedroom, like
Hmm.
a Kveik yeast or something,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so, those type of things are a little bit more forgiving. And so you can find recipes to just like that online.
Hmm.
You can
Hmm.
also ask somebody at a homebrew supply store if you're fortunate enough to live by one. Most of the people who work there are super knowledgeable about this stuff. Or go on a live and ask me and say, hey, I don't have fermentation temperature control. What can I use? And I will give you 15 different yeast choices to use or something. That's the idea is pick people's brain that know about it a little bit, and also like don't be afraid of it. Have fun. I mean, that's what it is. I think that what's the saying? Relax, don't worry, have a homebrew.
Yep. Exactly.
There's a little exactly. And so at the end of the day, you make beer, even if you don't
Yeah.
hit all of your ABVs, even if you don't hit all of your gravities. At the end of the day, it will make a beer. It
Yeah.
might be good, it might be bad, but you'll learn from it either way,
Yep.
and eventually you'll get better at it. It's just like making a cake. The first time
Hmm.
you're not going to
Hmm.
be, you know, an emerald chef or anything like that. You're just gonna, you know, you're gonna make mistakes, and eventually you'll make a great cake. But the
Right.
same with beer, right?
Exactly. So, like,
Same thing.
what are some of the biggest, or when I say biggest, what are some of the most common mistakes that new brewers make that maybe you can help them avoid making those? I should say.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say the first thing is fermentation and temperature control. And the reason I say that is because that was what got me kind of discouraged as a new brewer, is because like I was saying it earlier, when we first got started, was, you become you make the same recipe in the wintertime, it's great. In the summertime, it's not so great. And so I realized, and really later, I wish I would have learned that sooner. It was because my yeast was too hot. And you might think of like your ambient temperature of your room maybe be 68. Well, there's when the yeast is doing and getting active in the fermenter, it actually warms up the inside of the fermenter. So you might be 68 room temperature, but it's 72, 75 maybe in the fermenter. Maybe not quite that warm, but it's higher than the recommended maybe for that style yeast or whatever it is, right? And so I use a old chest freezer back behind me. You can kind of see the lid of it. And on the wall, there's as a temperature controller. It's $35, right? For one of those things. And that one's the Wi-Fi version. There's cheaper ones for 25
Nice.
probably for
Yeah.
the other one. But that thing, it kicks on, there's a hot and a cold plug. The cold one is for the refrigerator. And in the inside, I use a lizard lamp, which is like a ceramic bulb. There's no light source, but just ceramic. So it heats up. That regulates the heat. And
Hmm.
so it keeps the temperature of the beer within 1 degree at all times. And so I stick my beer fermenter all the way in that thing. I take the probe, I put it right next to the harness, and so it's on the outside of the fermenter, not in the beer.
Hmm.
And then that kicks on the refrigerator when it needs to cool down, and or the freezer. It becomes a refrigerator basically, but the freezer, and then it kicks on the lizard lamp when it gets getting a little
Hmm.
too
Hmm.
cold to kind of keep it. And then eventually it just needs to kick on a little bit, kick on a little bit, and it holds it at a specific temperature the whole time. And so most beers want to be, or ales anyway, want to be between like 65 and 67 degrees. And it's just not that cold, even in the wintertime in your house, unless you have like a basement in
Hmm.
Minnesota. And that's why I make great beer in the winter, right? But like, most of them you don't have that luxury of being that cold, and so these kind of help regulate that temperature. But it also
Hmm.
can do lager temps down in the lower 50s, or even cold crashing down in the 30s. Or it's obviously a freezer; it can freeze. So like those type of things. So you don't have to, if you already have a chest freezer,
Hmm.
that little gadget for $30 can make it a fermentation chamber, right?
Hmm.
Or even I've even had people that use a big tote, and they put like frozen jugs of milk or soda or a 2 liter
Oh,
bottle,
yep.
and they put water in it. They put their whole fermenter in the water, and then they trade out the
Hmm.
jugs of ice, and they put the cold ones in the freezer again, or the melted ones in the freezer, and they take out another one out of the freezer, put it back in the ice, and it cools it down. So you can try to get it at least
Yeah.
cooler that way. So there's different ways of doing it. That's called a swamp chest,
Yeah.
if you're wondering about
Swamp
that.
cooler,
Yeah,
something like that.
swamp
Yeah.
coolers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's different ways of doing it, but that's the biggest thing. You'll make better beer when you can make the yeast happy. So
Yeah,
like
for sure.
no matter what you're doing, whether it's a lager, whether it's an ale, doesn't matter the style. They all want to be a little cooler than you can make it in your house.
Yeah.
Besides the Kveik yeast, right? So the Kveik yeast is a
Oh,
little different,
so crazy.
and that one actually loves the heat.
Hmm.
Believe it or not, I've had a friend of mine who I've had to put a fermenter in a tub, and he turned down the hot water all the way, and it was like 90 degrees in the tub, and the thing just started kicking off. It was like the yeast wouldn't finish out, and he put it in the tub with hot water. It started going again, and the beer turned out fine. I was like, "You had to warm it up?" And he's like, "Yeah, I put it in the hot thing. I just turned on the water and let her go."
That's pretty cool.
So he
Yeah.
actually put it in the bathtub.
So
Yeah,
I like using Kvike for my ciders because Kvike doesn't
yeah,
impart any flavors, pretty neutral, right? For the most
hmm
part.
hmm
So for like ciders as brewing, I recommend that to anybody. If they want to make
yeah,
a cider and they want that strawberry lemon flavor to come through or whatever you're trying to do,
hmm
like you'll get those nice flavors.
yep.
So somebody go from like beginner now getting more of the intermediate stages, like what is like one skill or technique that kind of will help them level that up to get to that point?
Sure. Yeah. The second thing I would do, and I'm assuming we're getting into like all grain
Yeah.
brewing now, right?
Right.
Somebody who's trying to take the leap into all grain brewing and stuff is there's a couple different things. Is playing out around with your water. Water matters, right? Eventually. And so once you kind of honed in the process part of it, the fermentation part of it, the temperature control part of it, and you feel a little more comfortable, you got a few beers under or beers. You feel also beers, but you got a couple brews under your belt and beers, a lot more beers. But then you can kind of get into the realm of the water dishes. I know said you started a little backwards with that, but to me, like I use spring water right away because I didn't know. But also you don't know what the chemistry of that spring water is. You don't know how many minerals are in there, what calcium chloride, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so there are really cool calculators. I use one on Brewer's Friend. There's different
Hmm.
ones on
That's a
Brewfather
good
and
one. Yeah.
whatever other app you use, right? So I've just started using Brewer's Friend, so I use Brewers Friend for everything else. I don't get sponsored by them. I just put all my recipes in there, and I've done that for years, but that allows you to adjust based on the style of beer you're making, right? So one of the things that is, as people get started, if you make like a pale ale or an IPA, you have a different ratio of salts that you want to add versus if you make, say, like a hazy, which wants to be this kind of more pillowy mouthfeel, that kind of stuff. Well, a lot of that isn't necessarily the ingredients you're using, which some of it is, and the yeast you're using, some of it is, but a lot of it has to do with the water. And the amount they have a what they call a sulfate chloride sulfate ratio in there, right? And the more the one side, the more of one versus the other will make it either more um, crisp and bitter and have a lot more bite to it, and that's like the sulfate side of it. Or if you add more chloride to it, you get this more pillowy mouthfeel where you get this like almost feels like thicker and creamier,
Mhm.
right? And that's where you get the hazy IPA. So hazy IPAs were kind of invented because they were kind of going against the West Coast. They were kind of trying to be different, but still a lot of hops. They just flipped that water addition a little bit, and so that's really kind of all I do is I keep a similar water profile, for hazy IPAs as I do for, like, a pale ale. I just kind of flip the sulfate and chloride ratio around.
Okay,
So,
yeah, that's
usually you
interesting.
have, like, a 50 to 150, and then now it's, like, it's 150 to 50 instead, right? So so it's either 3 to 1 or 2 to 1
Mhm.
on this on the hazy. So I know I'm getting a little for people who aren't familiar with the water addition process,
Right.
but the calculators are pretty easy on some of those. That some of the calculators will just tell you what to do based on the style you're doing. Like here's how much you need to add, right? Based on your so the first thing you need to know is what your water is, right? So there are tests you can do, or you can even go on like Brewers Friends has a page where you can search, like if you live in Charlotte, North Carolina, you can search Charlotte and it will tell you water reports that people have submitted on there, and you
Mhm.
can get relatively close to what your water's going to be.
Mhm.
The best way to do it though, if you really want to be, if you're going to be like a brewer or like me, I've done this because I'm a nerd and I want to know, but I sent in a little vial for like 35 bucks to Ward Labs,
Mhm.
and they actually sent me back a little thing and said, here's your exact water report for brewing. I was like, sweet, that's awesome, right? So I got this little water report now. I use that because I know that's like from my house, right? And so, the same source I'm going to get it from, I'm going to use that for brewing. So now I plug in those numbers, and it says, okay, based on the amount of calcium and sodium and
Mhm.
bicarbonates and stuff that you have in your water, you're going to put in 4 grams of gypsum and 2 grams of calcium chloride and stuff to make this this water addition. So I think as you start getting into this kind of mid-range brewing, that's
Mhm.
probably the next step. And you can go down a huge rabbit hole with salts, and I'm not trying to get too
Oh, yeah, you can.
technical, but you can. That is going to take your beers from like good now, from like just using regular like
Mhm.
mineral or not mineral, what like um spring water to like great. Like it takes it to that next step because now you're working with the ingredients to 95% of your ingredient in your beer is water,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so making sure that ingredient is good is the next step, right? And
Mhm.
so and to style, right? A lot of the styles that you did do for like German
Mhm.
pilsners and stuff like that, you're mimicking the water they had in the region when they first started brewing those beers,
Yeah.
and so it's going to be different if you live in Nevada in the United States versus whether you live in Germany in the region where they brewed this pills or something, right? And
Yeah.
so it matters, and they try to mimic that region of water chemistry in those calculators.
Yeah, no, that's very true. No, that's really good advice. I like to use just distilled water because it's just a
Mhm.
blank slate, and then I can build
Yep.
up my water profile. That's going into the deep end. I feel like at that
Yeah.
point.
Or RO systems or something like
Yeah.
that,
Oh my
right? I have
gosh.
people who do that. So one thing I there's some debatable stuff, and I kind of give my buddy a hard time because he has an RO system, and so I hope he watches this and he watches this because I would give him a hard time still. But like a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with doing it that way. But like the calcium and stuff that comes in my water is free. So I don't have
True.
to put as
There you
much
go.
salt in it, right? So
Right.
like, and our water, where I live in general, is actually really good for brewing. So I wouldn't be discouraged. But there are a lot of areas of the country and people using well water or something else that might not be good. So there's a good reason for maybe wanting to use an RO system or distilled water because your brewing water or your groundwater there isn't great, right? But if you know it's good, it's a starting profile. There's not a lot of breweries. I would argue that there's very few breweries at all that will use RO
Oh,
systems.
probably not.
They
No.
probably yeah, because this would be way too expensive, right?
Yeah.
And way too time consuming even to like get all that water out of there. So they all use city water to some extent, right? Or well water or whatever it is, local water that's in their area, and so they have to start with that. So there's ways of changing your existing water profile,
Hmm.
and I'm fortunate where we just live in an area where we have good water. And if I brew a pilsner, I had zero anything, and it's like I like to think that back in Pangea, when the United States was right next to Germany, that we're really close to that, but I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I never know, right?
You never
So we
know.
get these. So so my water is probably pretty close to making like a German pilsner. I don't add anything. It's and the calculator says I don't need to add anything because the water's like perfect. So but yes, if you want to hone it in and get it perfect, you can use distilled or RO water and then add exactly what you need
Yeah.
in to make it exactly what you're doing. So you can do that. And as a home brewer, there's no really disadvantage to that. As a brewery, that'd be really
Oh
expensive.
gosh, it would be.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
I can
yeah.
imagine brewery spending.
That's right. Yeah, that's
I
right.
think it's like a buck and a quarter, buck 35 right now for 1 gallon of distilled water. I can imagine,
Right.
30 gallons or whatever. I
Yeah.
can imagine that.
Yeah.
So I guess it would be like just general wisdom. It's like, is there one piece of conventional homebrewing wisdom that you think is overrated or just wrong? And everyone's come up with some very unique answers. So I'm kind of curious what you're going to come up with.
So I'll probably use the cliche of what we kind of talked about earlier. Like you don't need all the shiny equipment. The stuff that the conical fermenters, even some of the brewing systems themselves, the 3 vessel systems, the different mash tuns versus whatever.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some of that can get you some like better efficiency and stuff. And they want people to feel like they're a little microbrewery in their garage,
Yeah,
right? That's what they're
100%.
designed to look like. But you don't need that stuff to brew good beer. I think there's a lot of people who have some of that, shiny equipment in their garage that brew terrible beer. I mean, terrible beer. Some of the best brews I've ever brewed were on my Rubbermaid container. Some of the best brews I've ever tasted from people who have brewed for decades are on Rubbermaid containers. Actually, one of the guys that is from the one of the other local homebrew clubs, older guy, kind of a gruff dude, and he goes, how I taste and see if the water's going to be good for this brew? With my finger, and he like dips it in, and he's like, and he brews fantastic beer. So he can just dip his finger after adding some salts and like tell if the beer is going to be good based on like how the water tastes. And is like, there's probably something to it, but you're like, dude, you're old school. You're like, but he brews in a Rubbermaid container still, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? So I think people are like, oh, you're brewing out of this rudimentary thing in your garage. No, there's more than one way to do it, and there's no right way.
Hmm.
If you're methodical in your process and you know what you're doing, you can make great beer with very rudimentary equipment and a lot of DIY stuff, right? Like how many
Oh my
stuff have I
gosh.
showed today?
Yeah.
And so although I use a claw hammer system, it's all in one, it's got pumps, it's got, whatever. It's still the same process as using the Rubbermaid container and a kettle, or even on your stove to some extent, right? So it's all the process. It's all about how much you're heating this one grain. It doesn't matter what the outside of that container looks like, right? And so I think that's the kind of overrated idea of brewing, is that when you get to some level that you got to have some like conical fermenters in your thing with glycol chillers and like all these fancy, things. No. You don't have to do any of that. A lot of people that I know, that some of them that even have really cool systems, still brew in a bucket. And it's like in a pail, right? So it's even Clawhammer. I mean, they in their little studio, they use plastic buckets still. I mean, it's the same fermentation vessel as a conical stainless steel fermenter with glycol. They're just throwing it in a chest freezer like mine,
Nope.
So
Exactly.
it's different, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And actually, I suggest people do that before they spend all this money on this crazy
Mm,
systems, because you can spend tens of thousands of
gosh.
dollars
Yeah.
down a rabbit hole with brewing equipment, and the people who sell that stuff would gladly sell it to you. But it
Hmm.
is definitely not a needed thing for brewing. But once you get into it and you want to have some of those because you know what you're doing and you've been doing it for a long time, absolutely, right? I'm not knocking those things at all. I'm saying a lot of them are meant for either you are now getting into the level of you brew quite often and
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
and you're good at it, or you just want to pretend like you're a cool commercial brewer in your garage, to look like that,
Right.
So there are benefits of some of that more expensive equipment, but you don't have to do it.
No,
It's not
no.
it's very, very seldom would I say, hey, when I'm tasting a beer at a competition, I know that this was brewed in some conical fancy SS Brewtech,
Right,
canonical
yeah,
fermenter.
yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
no. This is probably brewed in some dude's dirty garage in a bucket, and it's great.
Yep, yep,
So
exactly.
it's just the reality of it.
Yeah, this hobby can be as cheap as you want it or as expensive as you want it. Like, if you
Yep,
have all the money in the world, yeah, you can build yourself, like you said, just a mini nano brewery in your garage if you wanted to. If not,
that's right.
you can get a pot and a bucket that with a hole in it, so you can put
Yep,
I can
airlock. Yep.
thank you. I was drawing a blank out and then be done with it, right? Like it can be
Yeah.
that simple. Because like I think one of the best advice that I heard is I asked this one guy this question. I won't say who it is, but like we've been making beer for thousands of years before any of this fancy stuff came out.
Yep. Yep.
Temperature control, any of this stuff, and beer was always around. So
Yeah.
that was like his myth. I was like, dude, that's like mind blowing. I never really thought about that. Like, I was like, true, because
Yeah.
everyone talks about, oh, you need temperature control, you need this. And he's like, you really don't, because we've been brewing beer for thousands of years without it, and
So
people have been fine.
yeah, and cool story real quickly. I
Yeah,
went to Germany last year, so a year and a half ago I was in Germany and
nice.
we did like a brewery tour through Europe,
Hmm.
if you will. And I did a little video on that, so you can check it out.
Okay.
Coolest thing I ever did. Well, two things. We went to Stefan Brewery, the oldest brewery in the world. They're 1040 AD, right?
Oh my
So like
gosh.
the first time they brewed beer there, still brewing in the same location, right outside Munich. It's just north of Munich in Freising, Germany. And it's like I think it's a 20-minute train ride north. It feels like it's basically connected to Munich. We were there for Oktoberfest, so we went up there first, and we had some awesome food. But it's this little tiny like patio. You think it would be packed, like if it was like in the United States, I think it'd be like this tourist destination, like
Hmm.
everybody wants to go there. But it's just like this really kind of quaint, small little like food venue. I mean, it's probably smaller than some patios of some local breweries. It was cool, but it's like, man, they've been brewing here for since 1040 AD. This is crazy. And then we went to Pilsen in the Czech Republic, and we
Hmm.
went to Pilsner Urquell. And
Oh yeah, awesome.
this
Yeah.
was the coolest thing I've ever done, hands down, as a home brewer. As you do the tour there, and you can get it in English or in German or wherever, but
Hmm.
we obviously did it in English. And they bring you down into the cellars. This is how they lagered beer back in the day. They would have these literally tracks for carts to drive down here, and they would have these big casks, and they show you how to make the cask, and they open ferment in these things way down underneath the ground. I mean, now they have a brewery that does more of the stuff for the national stuff they do now, but they still do some of it the old way in these casks underground, and they tap one of these casks right there, and they fill it up, and they serve it you your Pilsner right there. It's so good. I mean, it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I did a whole video on it, and I kind of
I
geeked
definitely have
out
to
on the
watch
video
that.
because I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it was neat. It was so cool. I would definitely 100% do that
Hmm.
tour if you
Hmm.
ever get to Pilsen in the Czech Republic. It's awesome.
That'd be fun. Yeah. I thought I don't know if the wife would go. She doesn't do beer. Maybe I guess a friend to go with me. Maybe.
Oh, it's funny. My wife doesn't either. She loved it. She thought it was super cool. Like
Oh,
she
okay.
thought
Well, maybe. Yeah.
the tour was very entertaining, of course. And then the beer, she's like, she was a sport. She tried it. She's not her thing. She drank a whole glass of it. I was like, you're not a craft beer drinker. She's like, well, it's pretty good. Maybe we were tired of walking around, but like, I don't know. Yeah. But she's not a beer drinker either. She went along with it. But it's also just the cultural stuff. I mean, you
Yeah.
learn a lot.
Yeah.
It's
That's
more
what
of
I'm
an
before. Yeah.
educational. Yeah, and they talk about like they hid their fermenters during the World War because they were made of copper and different metals and stuff, and they didn't want the army to take it, so they buried them. They buried these fermenters underground so they couldn't find them.
That's
It's crazy. It's
fascinating.
like it's very much of a history thing as it
Hmm.
was beer brewing. It's very
I love
cool,
history.
very
Yeah,
cool.
I'm a big history
Yeah,
nerd for sure. All
yeah,
right, so I'm gonna jump over to like a rapid fire question, just kind of
sure.
whatever comes to mind. Just a little fun little piece I kind of like to do. So I'm gonna skip some of them because we've already talked about them. But favorite style to brew?
Um, I like a good pale ale or IPA. I wouldn't say brewing a hazy because it's kind of boring because you're waiting until the end for a lot of stuff. But I like when I can throw something kind of funky in the middle
Okay.
sometimes too.
Okay.
So like I really enjoy doing the spruce tip thing because it kind of made
Yeah.
me like, hey, I'm doing this other little thing. Sometimes we'll throw like ginger, or I brewed with salt and I made a like a salted you got chips and salsa type of beer. So I'll throw something a little funky in the middle and say that's, but I steer towards like
That's
a pale
cool.
ale IPA generally.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But if I can throw something in there to kind of give it a little something different, I'll
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm. Hazy or clear?
I like hazy beers.
Like
I'll
hazy
admit
beer.
I'm on the hazy train. Some people are like, "Oh my god, you're a craft brewer lover and you like hazies." I'm like, "Yeah, I love a hazy IPA if it's good." If it's good. I I'm a critic because I brew some good hazy IPAs, but at the same time, like
Yeah.
if there's a couple on tap, I'm gonna try them.
There
I'll
you
try
go.
them.
Perfect. I love it. Great answer. What's the best do-it-yourself build you've made?
Definitely the mash tun because I've
Okay.
used it the most,
Mm,
and then I think the second one would probably be the, hop spider, as far as the DIY stuff, just
mhm.
because those are the things that you're gonna get the most use out of and the most, economical use out of, and it's, pennies on the dollar compared to the commercial versions of
Oh
them.
gosh, yeah, 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 yeah. I still want to I have a mesh one that I've used. I don't make a whole lot of hoppies, but I have noticed that I still have to stir it, the
Mhm,
little hop
mhm, mhm.
spider just to get the fluid kind of going a little
Yeah.
bit. I thought about buying a pump. I don't have a pump either. I was also thinking about buying a pump and having a pump kind of push through it and stuff like that. That may do it, but
So it would fill up because it still would have a way to
oh,
outlet it. So
that's true. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
so
still,
you really just have to like pick it up and drain it or stir it around. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's why the DIY one still the
yeah.
best,
There you go.
still the best.
Perfect. Worst
Yep.
brewing purchase.
Oh man, brewery purchase. So I do a lot. I'm too cheap to like buy a bunch of stuff if I can make it myself.
Okay.
But I'd say oh man, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one
Okay.
because usually I'm pretty frugal where I'm like I'm not going to buy it unless I know how to use it, type of
Right.
thing. I would say like there's things I probably haven't used as much as I thought I would
Right.
when I brewed um I guess even stuff for making things easier to clean and stuff. Like I bought this like little tiny keg thing that I thought I would fill up with like cleaner and be able to like clean the lines and stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I have,
I used it like once, and like
oh, I
and
use mine
so
all the time.
so So the best way to do that, by the way, trick for the tipper trick for you,
Hmm.
when you're cleaning your keg, and I use this keg cleaner sometimes, but not all the time. If I'm just cleaning one, you fill up a keg with your regular cleaner. By the way, don't buy PBW all the time. Use OxyClean free, the stuff that's no stuff. OxyClean is actually better than the PBW because it's the same ingredients PBW with an extra oxy chemical in there that actually helps break down the proteins more. So it
Interesting.
actually is better. Now it does foam up a little more than PBW does. So if you're using it for like the sub pump
Hmm.
version,
Hmm.
I actually use some firm cap S in it, like you would use for boilovers.
Hmm.
It actually takes the viscosity of the bubbles down. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. But
That's cool.
to clean your lines, take the cleaner, fill up your keg halfway, clean your keg like you're gonna shake it around and stuff, but then just hook it up to the tap lines after you're done,
Hmm.
run it through the keg. You're pressurizing the keg with the cleaner in it, push it through the lines, let the
Hmm.
lines sit with the cleaner, the OxyClean in them for like 10, 20 minutes, then go through and as you're cleaning out the keg again and you're putting sanitizer in it this time,
Hmm.
just run sanitizer through the lines. And
Okay.
I never have to, I don't buy specific keg line cleaner ever, 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 ever. So only do it when you're cleaning the keg.
There you go. Yeah. So I jumped on the some YouTuber. I'm not gonna drop his name, but anyways, I think it was called like the Bar King. I think it's the name of like it's like it looks like a little keg. There's a pump on it, but it came with
Yeah,
like 30 packets of the Bar King cleaner, and so I'm still going through all that. So I'll keep using it until I run out of
sure.
those.
And they work. Just saying, you don't have to have
Oh yeah,
specialized equipment. If you already have a keg, you can use the keg
yeah,
to
that's
clean the
perfect. Yeah,
lines.
I love
Yeah.
that
You're
idea for
pushing
sure.
beer through it. You might as well push cleaner through it. You might
Yep,
as well push
yep,
sanitizer through it, right?
yep.
So I'll do it that way sometimes. And then it's just a matter like every once in a while you'll have to change your lines out, but like probably every 5 years, like or unless you have like something that's really bad, you don't
Yeah.
have to really clean them all that much
Uh,
or change them, I should
to
say.
change up, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I'm slowly switching over to the duotite system right now.
Sure.
I think that's pretty cool. I mean, they're easier to take apart and clean versus like the other one's not that hard, obviously, but it's just nice
Hmm.
to twist it with your fingers. So go find a screwdriver, have them twist it,
Yeah.
take it all apart. Um, so let's see. You already answered. You've answered so many of these already.
I told you I'm a talker. I'll just
You
overshare.
are. This is perfect. Okay, so I like this ones right here. These are my last two. So one brewing trend you would like to see go away.
Brewery trend.
Yeah.
Let's see, go away. And I know I'm gonna get flack about this. I don't love dogs in breweries, and I have a dog.
Oh.
I have a golden retriever,
Okay.
and I would love to take him, and I think he would love to go, right? And
Yeah.
some dogs are great there.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks their dog is good to be at a brewery,
Hmm.
and they're not, right? And so and some people, you never know. Like I know breweries are trying to be accommodating and stuff. If
Yeah.
I had a brewery, I would say, okay, cool, they're allowed on the patio, not inside. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like not inside. And I know a lot of people like if they're starting to serve food, they probably won't let dogs inside if they serve food and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like dogs just the other dogs don't like them. It takes the wrong dog walking past and all of a
Yeah.
sudden the two dogs barking and fighting and stuff. That's a one, at least from a commercial brewery side of things, that like leave the dogs home. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I get it. You want to take them out and stuff and get them socialized and stuff. And if they allow them on the patio, I have no problems whatsoever with that. I have a golden retriever, love dogs. I'm not saying that. I
Hmm.
just, when you have like five of them sitting inside and then you're walking past and the other one's like barking at another dog, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
did you really need to bring your dog out? Like, is he,
Yeah.
I mean, I know people are probably going to have some flack about that. That's just my personal opinion.
No,
So,
I have that as well. I don't like when they let them just loose and walk throughout the brewery. That bothers me a little bit too.
yeah.
Um, I don't mind little kids being there, but I have a problem with babies being there. Like I've seen a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
mean,
like
I
still in
think
the
they've,
car seats and stuff like that. I'm like, it just feels weird. Like I feel uncomfortable myself.
yeah. So to me, it's like one of those like they try to make them family friendly because
Yeah.
there's not, they're not like the biker bars, or it's a little bit weirder bringing them into like that kind of stuff. Like
Right.
if you're bringing them into a place and people are doing shots, it's like probably not the place for you. Like this
Right.
feels like a little bit more of a atmosphere where you can still people are playing games. But actually, when my son was really young, we used to go there and play like Yahtzee and other stuff. We were
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
at the thing. And so I think I don't really mind the strollers that much, but I get what you mean though. Like, but this is a way of them getting out of the house. Like maybe as new parents, it's probably hard to do that
Oh,
anyway.
I'm
But
sure it is. Yeah. I guess
so.
I just feel weird. I don't know. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just it's weird.
yeah. There's a line somewhere there, but
Yeah. I don't
yeah,
think it was crossed it quite yet. All right, so now we're
yeah.
kind of so final questions of like kind of the random or rapid fired ones. So if you could only brew one beer for the rest of your life or one style, I'll go that. Like, what would that be?
Um, Bell's Two Hearted Ale. Like,
Okay.
as one of my favorite beers, I
Yeah.
would brew a clone of that all day long, especially with their yeast, because their yeast
Yeah.
is fantastic. And
Yeah.
so, I have a video on how to like harvest their yeast from their bottles
That
and
is a good
replicate it.
video.
And you
I
can make
recommend
it.
that one. Yeah.
Great video. And
Yeah.
by the way, I intend to use their yeast in other versions of my own beers this year. I want
Okay.
to do that. So because
Yeah.
it's a good yeast to play around with. But if I had to brew one just because of like a taste of beer, that
Hmm.
is like to me still my kind of go-to beer. I love that beer.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah, and me being originally from Michigan, it definitely speaks a lot of
Kalamazoo,
home.
Michigan. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so I grew up on the other side.
Yeah.
I'm over here, and I was over in Flint, Michigan. Kalamazoo's over there.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Have you
uh,
been to their brewery though?
no, I never been. Never.
Okay.
The
That's a bucket list for me.
yeah. So I went to Founders a couple of summers ago. That was really cool. One guy gave me like the whole history of it, like where they started and how this place has just it blew up and stuff like that. So it's
Mhm.
really cool. Founders, not, I don't think they get come to, I know they don't come to Tennessee at all. I'm not sure if they're in South
Mm.
Carolina, but Founders is a really unique beer.
I've
Um,
seen them. I've seen
you've
them
seen
in
them?
certain, yeah, in certain like bottle shops and stuff will
Okay.
have them.
Yeah.
Not every grocery store or something like that will have
Yeah.
them.
So I definitely like more of their barrel aged stuff because they're all unique and a lot
Mm.
of them are more dessert style, I want to say. Like the
Yeah,
one is
right.
called like Curmudgeon's Better Half is one of my
Mm.
favorite ones, but it has like I think it has like maple syrup notes into it, so it's really, really good. Then they have like a
Cool.
Mackinac Island fudge, which tastes like Mackinac Island fudge if you've ever had that in your
Yeah.
lifetime. So it's good. It's a good winter beer. It's a good sipper. I think it's like 14% or something like that. So it's like it's a heavy beer, obviously, but it's a good sipper, right?
Yeah.
So
One of the trends that it's really weird that actually if going back to that other thing about
mhm.
like trends that you're seeing that are different is the all the imperial stuff that's coming out right now. It's like,
Mm,
do you really need to make it double everything? Like that now there's double hazy IPAs and double this and that. It's like
mhm.
not everything needs to be a 9% beer, right? I think I don't know why. I think it's just economically they think, well, it's more bang for your buck. It's like, but I don't even really want that stuff. I brew beer all the time, and I don't know if it's just for like some consumers. Maybe the people are buying it more than I realize, but like to me,
Right,
it's like
right.
there's a lot more
Mhm.
imperial stuff, especially over the last like year, I
There
would
has
say,
been,
on the
yeah.
store shelves, and
Mhm.
it's just weird to me. Like I don't get it, but
When I started seeing imperial seltzers, I thought that was interesting because, like, the whole thing was, like,
imperial seltzers.
low calorie
Yeah,
alcohol,
yeah,
right? Blah, 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 like, now they're imperial, I'm like, "But your whole marketing for years was this
yeah,
low
yeah,
calorie, low alcohol."
yeah.
Like, "Hey, whatever. You do you, boo."
All right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's the trend.
Yeah, it's a trend. Alright, so we're gonna get to, like, the wrap up section here. I
Sure.
apologize. So if you wanna go ahead and plug some of your socials right now, that'd be a perfect time, and I'll put them into the doodad later on.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find me obviously on YouTube at Cityscape Brewing. It's youtube.com/Cityscape Brewing. You can find me there. Again, I do the long form videos, of course, but every other Sunday ish. And I don't have a general schedule, but usually if you look at where my old lives were, and I usually keep a couple of those open to the public, and
Mhm.
then eventually I turn them over to members only after a few weeks. So members get some extra perks. If you do join my lives, I do give away like free stickers like these, and they have little QR codes to get back to my channel. And so I send those for free to people. So if they want to join one of my lives, they'll get some information on how to email me,
Perfect.
get for some free stickers, and then kind of join into the conversation, get some questions answered, that kind of stuff. I do have a Instagram channel, Cityscape Brewing
Mhm.
on Instagram as well. I'm less active there. I need to do more. I need to do more on there. I do post on there and do like my stories and stuff when I am going live, so
Okay.
people understand that I'm going on there. But it's a little less than my normal posts and stuff on YouTube. So I'm mainly there. I don't mind questions, whether it even be by email or anything like that. But the best way to do it is just kind of join in the conversation. I always tell people save the questions for the chats because somebody else watching is going to want to know too, right? So like that's part of it, is just kind of giving back, kind of creating this like you're trying to do, like a brewing community. It's more
Mhm.
than just information about brewing.
Yeah.
It's getting people like excited and wanting to talk about it and building like a group of people and a network of people who like brewing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly,
And
100%,
that's
yeah.
what it's about. That's right.
So I'm gonna plug your Charlotte's, homebrew club, the Ups,
Yeah.
which I think is a great name. So, like, how
Yeah.
so if people are interested, where can I find information about it?
Yep.
And when is
Sure.
the next meeting?
Yep.
Not March,
So
but maybe April.
it's Upper Palmetto Zymergy Society. I know it's a mouthful. I it was the name was coined before I got there, but it's
I love it.
upzs.org, and that's our website.
Okay.
We update that. We're just now coming out with our calendar for 2026 as the board is kind of deciding when we're going to do pint days and other things like that. We
Mhm,
do a
mhm.
lot of different competitions throughout the year. We meet in Fort Mill, South Carolina, at a brewery called Untamed Waters Brewing, and we meet every last Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
And so the last Tuesday of the month, you can go to Untamed Waters Brewing. That's where we meet. If you're not a member, don't worry about it. You can come a few times without having to join as a member, but kind of meet some really cool people. We do, like I said, we do competitions. In February, we're doing a brew your best. So brew any style, bring it there. We actually have a local brewery, Lower Brewing, is going to be judging and then brewing the winner of that brewing competition at their local brewery, which is just down the
Perfect.
road. So we try to give back to some of the other breweries in the area by having like pint days there, where all of our group will go. We'll do some contests and stuff, but they buy pints and stuff all day there, and then the club will buy a pint for everybody for as a perk for being a member of the club,
Mhm.
right? And so we'll go do an afternoon there. We'll do some giveaways and we do trivia and different stuff like that. And then as a kind of a reward, like they also come and they'll judge a beer for us, and they like it because then they can brew a different beer they weren't planning on doing on
Mhm.
their thing. They can put it on
That's
tap, and they
awesome.
can get a way to get the homebrew club some exposure too. So people who like craft brewing can kind of come back and say, hey, I tried a beer that you guys brewed at this other place. So we do that a couple times a year. We also do some fun stuff like fantasy draft, where we draft ingredients and we brew a beer based on that. So once
Oh, that sounds interesting.
somebody drafts an ingredient, you
Mhm.
can't draft it from anybody else. So if somebody gets 2 row, 2 rows off the board, like, it's like a player, right? It's like, so we do that, and then we do that in September, and we taste and judge those in November. It's really cool. So that'd be a fun thing to do in the fall. We've done that for, I think, about 6 years now. It's really fun. One of the best nights of the year.
That's
So we do
hilarious.
different fun stuff like that throughout the year. We try to make it a little interesting, and we try to make it kind of low key, but we also like to make it educational. We'll bring in different people to, like I said, different brewery professionals and other things to
Mhm,
talk about
mhm.
all things fermentation, from cheese making to cider to some of the head brewers at like
Mhm, mhm.
Noda will come down and talk about yeast or fermentation or something like that. And then you'll learn a lot of stuff. I did a presentation on souring just as even this last club meeting. So there's all different kinds of stuff. You'll learn a lot, and it's a lot of fun just getting together. And then people bring homebrews at the end. We kind of share at the end, and we'll taste everybody's stuff that they've been working on. So it's pretty cool.
That's exciting. Yeah, I love it. Who would you like me, or excuse me, who would you like to see me interview next?
Yeah, I love the idea of brewing somebody in the kind of homebrew um, supply chain
Mhm.
side of things,
Okay.
right? And so like, there's not a lot of those left, and so there's some really cool guys. The local one that we have here is called Alternative Beverage. They have a new owner actually. His name is Robert. He took over, and he's trying to make some changes because he bought it from a guy that retired, and he was really good, but he's trying to like bring it back into the kind of 21st century a little bit
Mhm.
as far as like updating the website and some other things. But we're super fortunate to have a local supply store. We realize that after a lot of these others like in Atlanta shut down. So it's cool that you're trying to support those guys and doing something like that with that type of community. But yeah, of course, other brew tubers and stuff like that. That's cool. But even some professional brewers, some people want to talk about like how'd you make the transition, the leap in from like a home brew to a professional brewing. And so it's not for everybody, and they could probably talk about the differences between that too.
Mhm. No, I mean, if you want, you can share my information with anybody you want to.
Yeah,
Just have
we'll
them
do.
reach out to me, and we'll see where that goes for sure. And
Sure.
this is the last question, I promise.
No
So
problem.
what I've been doing is I'm trying to collect recipes from every single guest that I have so far.
Hmm.
And when this episode goes live, I would like to post that recipe onto the Google Doc so people can go there, be like, oh, Dennis
Absolutely.
likes blah blah blah. And if you wouldn't mind sharing one of your recipes with my audience, that'd be
Sure.
awesome. Okay, cool. So
Yeah,
just email it
I can
to
do
me
that.
whenever you get a free moment. And
Yeah, yeah, I have an awesome, cold IPA recipe that
okay,
everybody should brew. I actually won a competition. It's actually one of these tap handles right up here,
yeah,
that I'll share with you. It's a really easy recipe. It
okay.
actually uses a lot of flaked rice. It's a light colored beer,
Hmm.
really good summer beer with a lot of like citrusy flavors. I'll share that with you, and you can give it to everybody. No problem at all.
That's perfect, man. I've had a pleasure. This has been a great time. Like I said, I've been looking for this for a while now. I'm glad we can make this happen. Hopefully,
Sure.
we can make some other little collabs happen in the future and
Yeah,
keep going from there.
definitely. I'll have to have you on the channel. It'd be really fun to have you on one of the lives,
Yeah,
and get to chit chat with some others, and they can pick your brain too.
like that'd be awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much, sir. And I'll talk to you soon.
Not a problem. Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.